All right. Testing, testing. Okay. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Today is Friday, which means today is Film Buff Fridays. Thank God, because today, Film Buff Fridays is my favorite day to stream. Yeah, it seems like every time I come here, I'm always having a tough Friday, and makes me feel a little bit better to be able to throw up my stream and talk about movies instead of everything else going on in my life. Streaming a little late today too, but that's kind of the benefits of just having started out. I don't have a whole lot of people who are exactly waiting to watch me, so I can kind of start whenever I want. But usually I start at 7. Tonight I'm starting at 8. Uh, I don't think anybody's on stream to complain about it now, so that's good. Getting good with that burp button. So, yeah, if you are catching this on YouTube, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the content. If you do, please give me a like and subscribe. Maybe consider checking out the Twitch channel. That's Cool Beans Hot Stuff. I think I got the link somewhere in the description to the video, along with all the web pages we're going to be looking at today. And if you enjoy film related content, then make sure you tune in or check me out on Friday, every Friday at 7 p.m. Or you can go through my Film Buff Fridays playlist on YouTube and see all of the latest streams that I've done on film related topics, right? So today for Film Buff Friday, we're going to jump back into film theory. Film theory has been kind of a thing that I've been going over for the last month. I decided I wanted to make at least one day in my stream of just reviewing films, critiquing film, things like that. Always wanted to do that, thought that would be really fun. And after a little bit of research, I noticed that I don't realize that I don't know how the fuck to actually do that, right? Like, I'm decent at reviewing certain parts of a film, like the narrative elements of it, like the story elements, things like plot, character development, and things like that, but that comes from having, a background as being a writer. I don't have any background in actually making film and have not been to, well, I did go to film school, but I got kicked out of film school before I could learn anything. And so I never did get to go to the classes where they talk about film theory and all this other stuff, right? So after looking into it, I realized what film theory was and was like, well, this is probably some good to know information if you want to start reviewing films honestly and giving it your best. So that's kind of what we're doing. And I thought it'd be kind of a fun little series to do, particularly when I first started streaming, because it might be a little bit more esoteric knowledge. It's probably not going to go roping all the new people into me and getting me, a huge following anytime soon. But it's good to practice since I'm just starting out. It makes really good practice material. And then it's always on my YouTube channel in case there is anybody out there who is interested in the information. It's out there. So that's good too. And it gives me a good basis for actually knowing what I'm doing to some extent when I actually want to review films. And hopefully it does the same for you, right? That's kind of the point, right? I imagine you found it, clicked on the title because you were intrigued and decided you wanted to get better at reviewing films as well. So hopefully this helps you out too. So today we're going to go over auteur theory. Okay, it's a type of film theory. There's a lot of different types of film theory. If you don't know anything about film failure, if you are a completely green newbie to it, you should check out one of my previous videos. I got one that's Introduction of Film Theory, Introduction of Film Analysis. Both of those videos cover just general film theory topics. The 8 elements of film theory is also in there. I just completed a video. Did I just complete a video? I don't think I did. No, I am going to be completing a video, I think, next week. Let me look through my handy dandy note cards here. Yeah, next week we're going to be deep diving into all the different types of film. Which is one of the elements of film theory. And if you were a subscriber to my channel, you would know that. And then later on, we're going to do a deep dive into different types of film shots because those are all important things to know. But we're also going to do at least once a month a deep dive, 2 hour deep dive, as deep as we can go in 2 hours, into some sort of film theory, some sort of what's the category of film theory, right? Because there's a lot of different kinds of film theory out there. There's feminist film theory, there's Marxist film theory, There's formalist film theory and structuralist film theory, and then there's auteur theory, which we're going to go over today because it's one of the easier ones to understand. It's a good place to start. I have some information for you. So by the end of the day, we are going to know pretty much all there is to know about auteur theory, or at not all there is to know, but we're going to have a really good basis of understanding. And then if you decide you want to go out in your own time and learn even more about auteur theory, you'll be able to do that. I'll have a lot of references to give you. There's a bunch of various books, well-known books on that subject. I'm going to go over those on stream, and then I'll leave the links below the video. I'm getting used to editing out all my human noises so I don't have to do it in post-production. And then yeah, so you should have a good basis of understanding, and everything that we go over today, I'll have the links down below in the description so you can double check any of it, continue learning yourself in your spare time. So with that being said, that's my whole little intro. Let's go ahead and jump into this, right? So what is auteur theory? Well, auteur theory came about to describe the impact a director can have on a movie. What does it mean? What does it need to be updated? And how can it help you on your projects? I don't know if we're not going to get to the section of updating quite yet, right? We're not exactly there, Kiwasabi. So let's just go ahead and start with what it is. A lot of questions. Oh, fuck yourself. Okay. A lot of questions come with the idea of auteur theory, but we feel the most important one to answer is how can it make you better at making movies? It's a term used to articulate how the great directors molded their films on every level to reflect their perspectives and visions. Sure, it needs some updating and a little background, but the idea of it can help guide the modern one-man band filmmaker to getting their projects seen. So if any of you are filmmakers, I guess this article's speaking to you direct. How? Well, we know there is one thing festivals, executives, and industry gatekeepers harp on time and time again: a story with unique POV, a vision specific to the storyteller. We hear people in development as well as programmers talk about this a lot. It's absolutely insane, man. It's like I don't burp all fucking day long until I'm either on stream or I'm about ready to kiss my girlfriend. Those are like the only two times that I'm burpy. The rest of the day, I'm like perfectly normal guy. But as soon as my girlfriend leans in for a kiss or I get on stream, it's just burp, burp, burp. Just a burping fool. So, how you develop your POV is one thing. How you implement it into your work, well, that in large part comes down to understanding auteur theory. So let's start with the basics, but by the end of this post you will be prepared to author your own films. So what is auteur theory? The auteur definition is author. It's just the French term for it. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Auteur. I guess I've heard a couple different ways. We're going to watch a few videos at the end of the stream to kind of help us practice, theory in practice, right? And when we do that, you'll hear it said in a couple different ways. And I don't know which one's correct, so I just say auteur. The auteur meaning, when it comes to film and cinema, is a specific kind of director who has such a strong signature sensibility that you know his or her film without seeing their name on it. They authored the film. The director's fingerprints are on everything. And, of course, one of the first images you're going to get is Quentin Tarantino. The topic has ruffled plenty of feathers over the years. Why? Because it suggests that a director has more responsibility for the quality of a movie than anyone else. That doesn't always leave cinematographers and editors feeling very valued. As we know from countless anecdotes, but also personal experience, a great editor can save a scene. A great DP can bring visual magnificence where none existed. And these are just two of the many critical artists and craftspeople working on a project. Let's not ignore the technical author of a film either. So isn't a screenwriter the auteur by definition? Well, yes and no. I mean, sure, the screenwriter is the author of the script, but consider this. Casablanca, often considered one of the top 3 movies ever made, had 5 credited writers, at least one more that was uncredited. Not to take away from the excellent work of those writers, credited and uncredited, but the reality is that attributing the final result of a movie to a writer is complex. They often have their work overwritten by others before it even gets greenlit. Studios also used to have much bigger influence on what a movie was. Producers and moguls like Irving Thalberg had their hands in every element of the process. Writers, producers, studio moguls, add them all to the list of people who help shape what a movie is. So who was the one steering the ship? The person that all the other collaborators' efforts were synthesized through. And then that brings us to auteur directors. Yep, you knew we were heading here eventually. The auteur is the director because that's the closest thing the filmmaking process has to a singular dominant voice. That's what people are talking about when they define auteur. But wait, not every director is an auteur. They have to fit into a special box as outlined by auteur theory. Over time, some of the details that define this idea have been set aside or forgotten. So we're going to get back to the original concept so you know the whole picture. And they are going to get back to the original concept. We are going to dive into the origins at a little later. I've got a better article that's a little bit longer that dives a little more, gets a little more in depth than this particular article does. We will be returning back to that article at a later date. But first, we want to know what these rules are. What constitutes an auteur director? How do you know a director is an auteur? Well, there are, I think it was 4. We'll find out now. There was 4 rules that directors need to follow in order to be considered an auteur director. So what are these rules? When Andrew Sarris took the auteur theory to the next level, and we'll find out a little bit about him here in a little bit, he laid out 3 basic rules. Okay, 3 basic rules. Fuck me. Off by 1. 1 is basic competency. A great director has to be at least a good director, which is to say that the director's movies must be technically competent. You can't have an auteur whose movies fail to clear some of the fundamental hurdles. Sorry, Tommy Wiseau. I don't know how to say that name, but I know that director and I know that movie. That's The Room. If you haven't seen that, it's like a masterclass in how to not make a movie. It's considered one of the worst movies ever made, and the absolute creme de la creme of the so bad it's good. Actually, I think it made a lot of money because so many people enjoyed watching it just to laugh at it that you could actually count it as a success, but probably not to Tom. He's a little upset about that. Okay, second rule is you have to have a signature style. Over a group of films, a director must exhibit certain recurrent characteristics of style which serve as his signature. This one is pretty self-explanatory. If a director isn't doing this, then he's not an auteur. You need to know it's Howard Hawks just by looking at it. Hawks is a great example because he made movies across genre. Hell, he practically defined every genre. The gangster genre with the original Scarface. That's the original Scarface, not Tony Montana Scarface or the Al Pacino Scarface. That was Brian De Palma who directed that. Romantic comedy with Bringing Up Baby. Westerns with Red River. Adventure with To Have and Have Not and Only Angels Have Wings. Hawks' Au Revoir is one genre-defining classic after another. The common thread to each, the Hawks' signature elements. It's also interesting to note that Howard Hawks was not celebrated by his peers. This piece goes a little deeper on how auteur theory changed the perception of Hawks and why. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. We might maybe come back to that and read that in a little bit, see what Hawks' deal was, where everybody decided they don't like that fucking guy, what his deal was. So yeah, you have to have at least basic competency. And then 2, you have to have a signature style. And I think at 2 is where like most of the directors you could think of kind of fall apart as far as like the case that they're an auteur, right? The case for that kind of falls apart when that lack of a signature style. There's a lot of directors out there who are genuinely good directors who are very competent, but when you watch their films, one is completely different from the next to the next to the next. There is no commonality between them, and I don't even mean in terms of genre, obviously, because here this fella Howard Hawks is considered an auteur, even though he did a film in every single, almost every single genre, at least every main genre during his time frame, and I don't know what time frame that is. I've actually never heard of Howard Hawks, so sue me, but I've definitely heard of the original Scarface. I've seen the original Scarface. Never heard of Bringing Up Baby. I've heard of Red River. I've never seen it, though. But, okay. Third rule of auteur theory is interior meaning. Interior meaning is extrapolated from the tension between a director's personality and his material. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck they mean by that, but let's read on. It seems what Sarris meant here was that the director's innermost soul must come through in the movie. One of the only ways to know that is what the director went through. One of the only ways to know that I feel like this was a very awkward way to structure this sentence, or I'm just having a hard time reading today. One of the only ways to know that is what the director went through to get the movie made. Did he have to fight hard against a film studio for certain things, or against the script? Are there specific moments that go beyond a familiar stylistic flourish? Moments that feel more like a piece of that filmmaker up on the screen? An example of this might be a moment distinct to the director, but that doesn't belong in the movie. An odd thing to celebrate, but more on that later. An example of this might be a moment distinct to the director, but that doesn't belong in the movie. Okay. Interior meaning is a tricky thing to get at with a director. How do we know what strange elements they came up with, or were odd little accidents? I think they meant to say or were, not where, but that's the last rule or guideline to defining auteur directors. The vagueness is what leaves open the great debate that can rage on and on. Yeah, that's kind of I have no idea why they would make it that vague. I was not expecting that. I was expecting a legitimate objection. What's the term? Objective three rules. That last one is about as subjective as it can gets. It kind of seems like, don't it? That's a little bit difficult to interpret if a director has his soul in there, right? But it is what it is. Okay, so we know what they are now. There's a couple other things that an auteur can add, or at least other aspects that will help you, more objective aspects that you can kind of look for to see, if they're an auteur director, things that could help point that out, right? So backstage.com over here, and all these articles will be linked in the video description too on YouTube, by the way. They have three other um three other points to look for to spot an auteur director. One, they should be instantly recognizable. The main thing is name recognition. If you hear a director's name, are you able to isolate things that will be in their new film? If hearing a director's name conjures up certain characteristics, think of Wes Anderson's vibrant color palettes, highly stylized symmetry, and eccentric narratives, then it's likely they make auteur cinema. So, instantly recognizable, that kind of goes with having a signature, right? The three main rules made by Andrew Saris guy was, um, competency, signature, and I took the link down, but I'm gonna have to pull it back up again. Competency, signature, and signature style and interior meaning. That's gonna okay. I might have to go back to that slide a couple times before I remember what the fuck all three of them are. So instantly recognizable kind of goes with that signature style, right? A signature style means it's instantly recognizable. Two, according to Backstage, they should also be transparent. To be an auteur, directors have to be willing to get personal about their thoughts on the world and how their film projects translate those views. However, it's not just about being quirky or opinionated. Being an auteur means having a direct style of art associated with their voice as a filmmaker and working consistently in that artistic space over and over. Their personality has to shine in a way that the audience finds relatable. So I think that kind of speaks to having the soul in there, kind of a thing. They need to put their personal views about the world, I guess, in there. I mean, sure, whatever. You can probably see a little bit of that in Quentin Tarantino, right? And the third one is consistent. No matter the story or genre, auteurs have hallmarks they carry from project to project. That again kind of speaks to the signature style, right? Whether that's a theme they often tackle or an actor they cast often. Oh, kind of like Martin Scorsese and with Robert De Niro, or Martin Scorsese with Leonardo DiCaprio, right? What do they think of the world? What shots do they like to use? Are there cinematographers or composers they work with over and over again? So, consistency in between projects, right? And that looks to be like consistency in the sense of hallmarks that you can kind of rely on. They're going to do this, right? Whenever you hear there's a new Martin Scorsese out, there's a high likelihood it's going to have Robert De Niro or um, Leonardo DiCaprio in it, right? Transparent means they're kind of putting their own worldviews into the film and doing it with a voice and artistic flair that is, one, relatable, and two, well, again, consistent. And then three, they should be instantly recognizable. That signature style should be something that is distinct to them, so that it is easy to recognize. Directors and studios both wield a strong influence over movies, leading many film theorists to integrate the notion of just who is responsible for creating a film. Directors who are able to leave their indelible, yeah, I'm going to say indelible mark on films despite or with the approval of studio control are often called auteurs. So, in a nutshell, that's what it is, right? The basic idea behind auteur theory is it's the director is the author, or that at least there are certain directors that can be the authors of their films. And again, we now have at least the three main, generally universally, because I pulled up a few different articles when I was initially researching this, and they all had generally the same rundown. They need to have a signature style. They need to have at least be competency, signature style, and interior meaning, or put their soul into the film. These are kind of just extra additional things that can help you trim down the fat and understand, particularly since that third one is so kind of out there and hard to define, very ambiguous. Instantly recognizable, transparency, and what it is they're trying to say, and consistent with that their style. That is another three signs that you're dealing with an auteur, right? So, who are some famous auteur directors? So, this would include Paul Thomas Anderson, who did Licorice Pizza, There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love; Wes Anderson, who did The French Dispatch, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and The Royal Tenenbaums. My personal favorite of his was the Darjeeling Limited. I fucking loved that movie. That was one of my top 10 favorite movies. The rest of his movies are good, they're fine, whatever, but the Darjeeling Limited was just one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. Jane Campion, The Power of the Dog, The Piano, Bright Star. Frank Capra, It's a Wonderful Life, It Happened One Night, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I've definitely heard of It's a Wonderful Life. I haven't seen those other two though. Ryan Coogler, who did The Black Panther, Creed, and Fruitvale Station. I think he actually Fruitvale Station. Excuse me. I think Ryan Coogler just did that movie Sinners that everybody's online freaking out about. Right? Let's just look it up real quick and make sure that I'm not bullshitting you. Make sure I'm not lying. You gotta have the no. Okay, sometime. Oh, yep. Nope. Oh, let's just go to IMDb. Yeah, Ryan Coogler. I thought so. Okay, so yeah, he just did that movie Sinners, and before that had did Black Panther, Creed, Fruitvale Station. Never seen Fruitvale Station. I've never heard of that one. I've seen the first two though. Sofia Coppola, Lost in Translation, The Virgin Suicides, Mary Antoinette. Definitely, I've seen the first two of those too. Alfred Hitchcock, North by Northwest, Vertigo, Rope. I almost thought that was another R word in there. I was like, wow, he made a movie called that? Shit. Spike Lee, The Five Bloods, Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X. Christopher Nolan, Tenet, The Dark Knight, Inception. Jordan Peele with Get Out, Us, Nope. Martin Scorsese with The Irishman, Goodfellas, The Departed. I mean, you can throw in tons of Scorsese movies in there, you know. Steven Spielberg with Jurassic Park, Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Quentin Tarantino with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs, you know. Chloe Zhao with Eternals, Nomadlands, and The Rider. I would throw in a couple of my two personal favorites onto that list as well. I would throw in Guy Ritchie, who did Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, and Rock and Rolla. He has since branched off and done a few various movies that kind of don't have some of the main Guy Ritchie flair to them, but especially his early filmography was very distinct. You could watch one of his first films and be like, oh, I've definitely seen this guy's work before. Another one would be Tony Scott, and I think with Tony Scott, it would be closer to his later films. Actually, it'd be towards the end of his career. Things like, I don't know if he did Out of Time, but Man on Fire, John Q, Domino. All three of those films and there was a few others in there too. I don't know if he did Out of Time though. We're gonna have to, again, that was with Denzel. out of time. He was that Tony Scott? No, Carl Franklin. Okay, yeah. So I didn't get that one. But Tony Scott, he developed a very distinct style that you can very, a Domino and Man on Fire, especially. Come to think of it, I don't even know if Tony Scott did John Q. If any of you haven't seen John Q, this is a great fucking film, by the way. Really good movie. No, Nick Cassavetes. Okay, never mind. Nick Cassavetes. All right. What films did Tony Scott do? Let me just throw him in here. Because we got a pretty short stream today. It's going to take, we got enough material for a couple hours, but we can throw in some little extra stuff there. I don't have anything going on after this except for a little writing. Producer, director. Here we go. Unstoppable. Oop. Nope, that's back into producer. Okay. They did a whole fucking thing on me there. All right. Unstoppable, The Taking of Pelham 123. He did the remake for that. That's what I'm thinking. Deja Vu. Deja Vu, Domino, Agent Orange, Man on Fire. Agent Orange was a short, I guess. I had never seen that one. Never. Oh, yeah, I've seen Spy Game. Spy Game had its. Yeah, I think it kind of throws in there, but definitely Man on Fire, Domino, Deja Vu. Those three movies have such a distinct style to them. They're very hard to miss. Crimson Tide, The Fan with Wesley Snipes and Robert De Niro. True Romance, written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Tony Scott, has some similarities. The Last Boy Scout with Bruce Willis. Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise. Oh, Beverly Hills Cop 2. I didn't know he did that. Top Gun. Oh, shit. Well, there you go. Oh, The Hunger. That was a really good one. So, yeah, he's done a lot of really good films. But there was a time in his career where the films he was making were very, very distinct. So, anyways, yeah. For example, in Get Out, Us, and Nope, Jordan Peele takes a radical, socially conscious approach to horror that illuminates issues of class, race, and intergenerational trauma. Similarly, a distinctive blue color palette, investigation of identity, and romanticization of the West appears in Zhao's Songs My Brothers Taught Me, The Writer, and Nomadland. Viewers can anticipate the kinds of shots, scores, characters, and takes on any given film by these directors might portray. Historically, auteur theory has not applied to television since TV directors usually abide by how writers craft the story. This has changed in recent years with the proliferation of streaming services that sign ongoing contracts with TV directors. For example, Ryan Murphy highlights marginalized characters and addresses issues of gender and sexuality in the shows he directs, making them highly recognizable, although it is worth noting that he co-wrote or wrote many of these shows as well. I'd say another one on the television side that's probably very recognizable to a lot of people would be, what's his name? They said the name Ryan Murphy. Now I'm all fucked up. I believe the guy who did Haunting of Hill House. Director. Let's just click here. Mike Flanagan. That's it. Yeah, Mike Flanagan had, now he does TV. He's done a few movies, but now he does TV and for streaming. I think he just signed on to Amazon Prime. He's going to be doing most of his television now from this point forward with Amazon Prime. He has somewhat of a distinct style, right? So let's see. Issues with auteur theory. Yeah, we're going to put that back. Yeah. We'll go over that here in a second. We're going to go over some other top 10 modern auteur filmmakers. Dive a little bit deeper into these top 10 just to kind of get an idea of why they're considered auteurs. That always helps kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of jog the minds. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But anyways, Paul Thomas Anderson. Let me start with the man who got me thinking about this list. So much has already been said, analyzed, and discussed about his work. Anderson had his directorial debut in the mid-90s. Since then, he has made films of serious study. Anyone could try to claim that his movies are more artistic than commercial. Regardless, his work is so meticulously created that the big movie studios are willing to finance him because they know the general audience will watch his films, while the niche audience will still enjoy the profundity of his content. He is one of the most respected and solidified directors that we have now. His biggest inspiration was Hollywood director Robert Altman, and these two worked together on Altman's last film, A Home Prairie Companion. Now that Mr. Anderson is famously known for writing his own movies, probably comes as no surprise. This skilled filmmaker knows how to write powerful characters with intelligence and taste, and a tendency to favor psychological stories and social settings, similar to another Hollywood director, William Wyler, from the B&W era. We can see this tendency in movies such as Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, and The Master. Anderson is famous for lengthy shots that can be noticed in almost every film. The opening of Boogie Nights is a good example, and the complexity of characterization. The soundtrack and score also have a big impact. In Magnolia, for example, when the camera starts to follow characters heading to the TV show, the score accompanies the camera movement and intensifies in dramatic moments or plays low key in the background, almost unnoticeable by others. Yeah, so we can go through. Here, let me pull up that previous list again. Nope, that's the list we're on now. Here we are. So if we go through this list, we can look at all these directors, and you can definitely, I mean, with every single one of them, you can check off competency pretty easy. There's not a single name there. There's a couple names there that I'm not very familiar with. Jane Campion, I'm not familiar with her. I think every other one, though, I've seen their movies, or at least know who they are. Chloe Zhao, I don't entirely know who she is, but I have seen her movies. I've at least seen Nomadland. It was a decent flick. I mean, it was a good flick, just wasn't my thing, you know. But all of these directors, easy knockoff competency, super easy, right? If we just went through and applied the three main rules to these directors, they hit competency, super easy, right? Um, Second, the signature style. Some of them I haven't seen enough of their films, like we were just talking about Paul Thomas Anderson. I've seen There Will Be Blood, Punch Drunk Love. The other list, what did they give us? The Master. There's definitely similarities between There Will Be Blood and The Master. Absolutely. Magnolia, I don't know if I've seen Magnolia, to be honest with you. I've seen Steel Magnolias, but I don't know if I've seen Magnolia. So we're going to have to, I was actually going to pull up over here. We're going to Paul Thomas Anderson. You know what? Let's just hit Internet Movie Database up. Oh, okay. Are they making a third Now You See Me? Is that what I just saw there? I don't know if that movie needs a third. Anywho, so director, okay. He's made a lot of shorts. Licorice Pizza, I haven't seen that yet. I did hear about it. I can't remember if I heard good things or bad things. Oh wow, he's made a lot of movies. Done a lot of music videos too. Anime or Anima, Phantom Thread, some music video. Uh, Junun, Inherent Vice, The Master, There Will Be Blood, uh, Punch Drunk Love. I mean, but those are video. Huh, okay, like videos inside of the movie. I don't know. Um, Punch Drunk Love, music video, TV short, music video. Magnolia. Okay, I think that is the movie that I'm thinking of. Okay, I have seen that. Yeah. William H. Macy, Tom Cruise. Okay. Yeah, Tom Cruise. Okay, I know which one this is. Yeah. Um, and oh, he did a bunch of Fiona Apple music videos. Okay, Boogie Nights. I haven't seen Boogie Nights. I don't know what that is. So, I mean, that actually about covers his filmography as far as movies go. And I guess I just haven't seen enough of them to recognize specifically what his distinct style is, right? But Wes Anderson, okay, Wes Anderson, I feel like is a pretty easy one, right? He's gonna go. In fact, we can probably skip him because we actually have a whole video that we're going to watch. I mean, it's only a 6-minute video, but it's a 6-minute video just on Paul Anderson and how he's an auteur and what makes him an auteur. So we're going to skip him for now. Quentin Tarantino. Okay, I think that's another easy one. Tarantino has always given me the impression that he promotes gratuitous violence. I'm not suggesting that violence should be justified in order to happen. I have been more under the assumption that Tarantino was more efficient in writing scenes than stories. Putting my feelings aside and taking a closer look at his work, first, the man creates remarkable standalone characters. Who can forget memorable characters such as the ones played by Uma Thurman in Kill Bill or Shoshana Dreyfus in Inglourious Basterds? Yes, Pulp Fiction has great characters too. The complexity of characterization, the motif, and style become visible and constant throughout his movies. Westerns, Japanese anime, and martial arts have largely influenced Tarantino. Yeah, he does. I know he has like a huge love for westerns, Grindhouse, obviously. I didn't know he had a thing for Japanese anime. That blows my mind. But martial arts movies, kung fu movies were a big thing. You know, um, so yeah, complexity of characterization, I guess, yeah, you could throw that in there. I think for me specifically, there's a lot of very distinct uh shots. I mean, Quentin Tarantino is famous for always having a woman's feet in his movies. I don't know if you are aware of that or if you have noticed that. Tarantino famously has, I don't know if he actually has a foot fetish, but that's what everybody says because in every single movie he's ever written or directed, um, there is a woman in there somewhere that we're gonna sit and we're gonna have a nice long shot of her bare feet. Is this director? This is saying writer, right? Credits. Director. Give us direct. The hell. Okay, yeah. Take out actor and producer. So director, previous. Okay, so yeah, he did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was his latest one. The Hateful Eight, Django Unchained, Inglourious Bastards, Death Proof, Kill Bill 1 and 2. He was a special guest director on Sin City. Jackie Brown, I think if I remember correctly, it was the cop car scene or the scene where Jackie is driving a dead body and he has a cop behind him with his lights flashing on. Uh, Jackie Brown, Four Rooms, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Right. So those are, that's the bulk of his filmography. And yeah, especially his early filmography, Jackie Brown, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. And then when you dive into the movies that he's written, like True Romance, directed by Tony Scott. Oops. There we go. The Pimp. He wrote the novel for that. Oh, okay. Let's see. From Dusk Till Dawn was another one, I believe, in the 90s that, had Tarantino's vibe all over it. Plus, he acted in it, obviously. But if you haven't seen that, that's a great vampire movie. A lot of people are comparing that movie Sinners to From Dusk Till Dawn. And I don't know, I haven't seen Sinners, so I'm not sure how much that comparison actually sticks. But for me, From Dusk Till Dawn is my all-time most favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. Even though, if we're including movies he wrote and movies he directed, that one was directed by Robert Rodriguez. But I fucking loved From Dusk Till Dawn. That was such a good one. Pulp Fiction and Natural Born Killers and True Romance were also two movies. Oliver Stone directed Natural Born Killers, and I famously Quentin Tarantino hated it, or at least didn't like it. Didn't like the direction Oliver Stone took it in. But Tony Scott did True Romance, and True Romance is right up there with Jackie Brown, Pulp Fiction, and Reservoir Dogs as like absolute Quentin Tarantino, But yeah, he has a lot of things going. I mean, one, you look at the movies he's directed, and because we're talking about auteur, right? So we're going to go specifically with direction. He always uses non-linear plots. Doesn't have a single movie that I can think of that isn't non-linear in some way, shape, or form. There is always some kind of flashback or move forward or some sort of non-linear component to every one of his movies. He's very famous for the long following the character shot. He had a few of those. Reservoir Dogs, he used that with Mr. Blonde when he walks out of the torture room. the warehouse where he's torturing the cop, goes into his trunk. He's famous for trunk shots, opening the trunk and having the camera looking at the actors. He's famous for the foot shots. I don't know how, I'm sure he might get a kick out of that, but I don't know how much you want to be known for your foot shots. He's very famous for using, I forget the name of it, but there's a particular shot where you have something focused on the foreground and then you have something, the camera also focused on something in the background. And I believe it's actually two cameras. They like sync or splice together the two different shots from two different cameras. One camera's focused on the foreground, another focused on the background. It starts with a D. It's diopsism or something like that. Diopsis or something. It's a really difficult shot. Supposedly we'll learn more about that on shot day when we're talking about deep dive into film shots. We'll talk about diopsis or whatever it's called. Quentin Tarantino uses that at least once in every single film. Its soundtrack plays a big role in Quentin Tarantino films. I'm surprised they left that out. He is constantly using popular music in his soundtracks. Popular culture music, and the music that he chooses is always has a huge impact on the movie itself. Sometimes has a lot of meaning and gives the movie an extra layer of meaning. So there's a lot that you can point out for Quentin Tarantino. Terrence Malick. I can't say that I know who he is. Maybe I've seen some of his movies, though. Over the period of 40 years, Malick has only directed 6 films. Perhaps that may explain why people may not be familiar with him. He is known for being a reclusive director and avoids the press like the devil avoids the cross. His private life comes first, regardless of his decisions. Malick has contributed some great films. I was first introduced to his cinematic world with The Thin Red Line. Oh, I have seen that, yeah, and have admired his work since then. Movie studios deal with deadlines, but Malick is known for wandering off and experimenting with film, and not being so considerate of these deadlines. Over time, the modern Hollywood studio system and Malick have learned how to handle their differences. Nonetheless, when the auteur theory is applied to his cinematic work, he is a master. He prefers the cinematography be of natural light over that created in a studio. He loves the magic hour, which is sunrise or sunset, to shoot scenes. In retrospect, throughout Badlands, Days of Heaven, The Thin Red Line, and The New World, I've only seen The Thin Red Line out of those 4 movies. The sounds of nature have made a prominent footprint in his films. The sound of birds, crickets, and other various animals are almost constant and represent man's connection with nature. And one of his biggest signatures throughout his films is certainly the prevalent use of voiceover, an advanced screenwriting portal he has slowly abused over time. Okay, Terrence Malick. Let's go ahead and look into him. They said he only did 6 films and they already listed 4 of them. So, Terrence Malick. He looks familiar. That face looks familiar. I don't know where I've seen him around. They said he's kind of a recluse, though. So let's get producer out of there and let's just focus on director. Okay, A Hidden Life. Haven't seen that. Song to Song. Voyage of Time. Knight of Cups. To the Wonder. The Tree of Life. The New World. The Thin Red Line. Days of Heaven. Badlands. And Lantern Mills. That's a short, excuse me. So the only one that I notice is The Thin Red Line. So that's not nearly enough for me to be able to pick out any auteur elements of his signature style. Martin Scorsese. Okay. You talking to me? You talking to me? Scorsese has invited audiences to the other side of New York City. Taxi Driver is a thematic homage to John Ford's The Searchers, which marks the beginning of characters who are social misfits, protagonists as antagonists. Although Scorsese does not tend to write his own films that much, he co-wrote Goodfellas and Casino. He is a master showing how gifted he is through crime dramas or the superb romance, The Age of Innocence. What makes him an auteur then? The theme and style are constant throughout his films, and he is usually focused more on male characters in a world of violence where the strong ones will survive. For Scorsese, it's the law of the concrete jungle. His mise en scène is noticed in slow motion to heighten a moment of psychological duress, and the use of long tracking shots as seen in Taxi Driver and Goodfellas. Additionally, the use of pop music is constantly present in most of his films. It's funny that they say that for Martin Scorsese, which is definitely true, but he didn't note that for Quentin Tarantino. He even went out of his way to say he doesn't like Tarantino. He's one of those cool guys. I noticed you get a lot of those. If any of you spend any time on Reddit, and if you don't, that's probably good for you. That's probably healthy. But if you ever spent any amount of time on Reddit, you've certainly noticed the whole world's filled with the contrarians out there. The whole Reddit world it was filled with contrarians, guys who just want you to know that they like everything you hate and they hate everything you like. Right? It's like an ongoing thing. So when it comes to Quentin Tarantino, he's usually the most hated there is. So Scorsese, I'm familiar with a lot of his work, and yeah, he definitely has some auteur elements I could definitely pick out. I bought Killers of the Flower Moon, and I still haven't seen it. I just haven't had the fucking time. I started streaming, and that kind of took away that one of the hours of the night that I had to just chill and watch a movie. So that's a bummer. I haven't seen that one yet. The Irishman. Um, let's see. I believe Vinyl Arena or the 50-year argument. Some of these I'm gonna skip just for a moment, and I'll come back to them. But like Hugo, for example, but The Wolf of Wall Street, everyone definitely remembers that. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, we got a whole Shutter Islands, The Departed, The Aviator, both really good ones. Gangs of New York, Bringing Out the Dead. Wow, I forgot that was a Scorsese movie with Nicolas Cage too. Wow, wow. Okay. Let's see. We'll get into these two here in a second. But Casino, The Age of Innocence, Cape Fear. Oh, I forgot about Cape Fear. That's a good one. Goodfellas. Uh, we'll get into that here in a minute. The Color of Money. I completely forgot about that one too. After Hours, The King of Comedy, Raging Bull. Who could forget about Raging Bull? The Last Waltz, New York, New York, Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, Boxcar Bertha, Italian American, The Honeymoon Killers. Who's That Knocking at My Door? And It's Not Just You, Murray. That was, I guess, a short he did. So those are all like his more kind of like famous movies, right? And you got so many different genres in there, right? Quentin Tarantino has a lot of genres that he works out on too. But Martin Scorsese just like runs over the various different genres, right? But he's mostly well known for his crime drama or gangster movies, Goodfellas, Casino, Mean Streets, obviously in there. His Taxi Driver would kind of fall roughly into the same element, I suppose. The Departed, obviously a really big one. He certainly has his historical epics, The Aviator, Gangs of New York, Killers of the Flower Moon. All three land in that general area. Raging Bull, I don't know if that's necessarily an epic, but it would definitely land in there, right? And he's got his horror, not necessarily horror, but his thrillers. Bringing Out the Dead, Cape Fear, and Shutter Island are three really big ones, obviously. All really good. And so yeah, Wolf of Wall Street, kind of more historical. Yeah, he definitely seems to enjoy making movies about historical people who were actually existed. He certainly likes doing that. A lot of his movies are based off of real life. Goodfellas was based off of Henry Hill. Casino was also based off of a real set of gangsters. Nicky Santoro or Santino and somebody else. Let's see. I believe Mean Streets was actually based off of some aspect of his life. Not that he was a gangster, but there are people that he knew. Raging Bull is based on Jake LaMotta. New York, New York is based off of real people. I believe it's a musical, actually. New York, New York is, as are a couple of these other films. I'm pretty positive. And then of course, Temptation of Christ. Obviously, Christ was a real person. Um, let's see, Gangs of New York, very loosely based on real people, but was based on a real aspect of history. The Aviator was based on a real director. Even characters in The Departed were based off of real people, just changed the names, but obviously Jordan Belfort and The Wolf of Wall Street. So you can see The Irishman, gosh, so all of a lot of his movies are based on real people. He takes some aspect of history and definitely applies a lot of artistic license to it, sometimes more than others, but applies his artistic license to it. And that's something that you're very aware of when he's directing. Now, he also, a lot of people don't know this. I was on Reddit again the other day, people wanting to give hot takes on Reddit. And people were talking about one note directors, directors who are one note ponies, one trick ponies, one note directors, same thing. And a bunch of people mentioned Martin Scorsese. I was like, what the fuck are y'all talking about? This dude's done thrillers, he's done gangster movies, and two things that people aren't even aware that he does very regularly is he does one, a lot of religious films. Okay, so you saw The Temptation of Christ in there. I don't know if the 50-year argument is a one of those. What is Hugo though? I don't know what exactly Hugo is. 1931, an orphan living in the walls of a train station gets wrapped up in a mystery involving his late father and an automaton. I have never seen that. I haven't even fucking heard of that. There are so many Martin Scorsese movies that you've never heard of, but he did. I thought he just did one recently. He just did a. I guess not. My mistake. I thought there was one recently that he did that was a religious movie, but he's done two or three religious movies, maybe even a couple more than that. Um, and then he is very famous for, or not necessarily famous, but he has done a lot of music documentaries. Michael Jackson, the number ones, Shine a Light. I forget who that was about, but let's look at it. The Rolling Stones, Shine a Light. Okay. Um, I knew that was, I don't know, public speaking. Who is that? Uh, Public speaking, an examination of the life and work of author Fran Lebowitz. Okay, all right. So that's about Fran Lebowitz. I don't exactly know who he is. Street of Dreams is this? I'm sure this is commercial for the perfume The One. Oh, okay. So that's just a commercial. I guess. All right. Um, Gosh, there's more in here. We need to keep kind of go down to check them all out. Kundun or Kundun. I don't know how to pronounce that. That had is a, I believe that was a religious theme. The Age of Innocence is a romance. Let's see here. Robbie Robertson, Somewhere Down the Crazy River. Last Temptation of Christ, obviously. Michael Jackson, Bad. That's like Um, two different Michael Jackson movies he's done. The guy has done uh, multiple what's the word fuck documentaries in his life specifically on musicians, right? And I think more so is specifically famous people from the city of New York. I think that's a very commonality between it with his movies too, is a lot of them are centered around the idea of New York, right? So not all of them, but a lot of them. So a lot going on there. All right. Todd Haynes. I recognize that name, but I can't recognize who that is. One of the things that Haynes has done well is to put the new wave of gay cinema in a better light during a time in Hollywood when homosexuality wasn't seen in films much. Not every Haynes film is a big hit, but his unique voice and style are noticeable. He has the sensibility to capture the struggles of life through his simple style of mise en scène. The story of Safe is shot from a distance through a lot of detachment, with his camera being distant from the characters with rarely any close ups. Elements of fear and paranoia embody the film. The editing only helps create the sense of fear and eventual breakdown. Velvet Goldmine, about the crazy days of glam rock in 1970s, is considered a misstep. Oh. Inspired by director Douglas Sirk, uh, he writes and directs Far From Heaven, which deals with repression, a theme that becomes current, and the use of the saturated Technicolor palette here marks a style too. I'm Not There is another story about musical figures. Recently, he adapted Mildred Pierce for HBO, and his theme of repression and disconnection are also present. Some may argue that it might be too soon to add Haynes to such a list, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on his work. Okay. Um, Todd Haynes. I have not heard that name. Well, I have heard the name. I just don't know. Let's look him up real quick to see if we can find a movie of his that I've actually seen or a movie of his that you have seen, maybe. Let's see. Yeah, director. Okay. So, May, December, The Velvet Underground, Dark Waters, not 2019 Dark Waters, Wonderstruck. Wonderstruck. That sounds familiar. Carol. He's done some television series, Six by Sondheim, Enlightened, Mildred Pierce, I'm Not There, Far From Heaven, Velvet Goldmine, Safe, Dottie Gets Spanked, Goo, Poison. The only one that's really hitting me is the Wonderstruck. I don't know. Maybe you guys know him. David O. Russell. Russell is working his way up as an auteur. His directorial debut, Spanking the Monkey, deals with family struggles, a theme that becomes consistent in his films. The tone of his film is marked with dark humor and satirical social commentary. In The Fighter, oh, that was a good one, 2010, the consistency of his themes becomes established, with messages that family can save you from problems. The complexity of characters and his work gain notoriety. His characters are torn between family, career choices, and love interests. His following works will support his tendencies. Silver Linings Playbook, oh, there you go, yeah, a dark romantic comedy that deals with love, can save you from mental illness, while American Hustle, oh my gosh, that was a good one too. A lot of people hate on that movie nowadays, so like, whatever, whatever, but all your whatevers aside, it was a good movie. Shows that if you are an honest person, you won't end up alone. Russell also gets notoriety with his mise en scène when the camera moves toward characters, away from characters, and even circles around characters. Okay, David O. Russell. Nice. So there's definitely a few movies in there of his that I've seen. I'm going to have to go back and watch some of these, though, because I certainly haven't looked at them enough to be able to pick out specific auteur themes or, things in there that would, indicate he's an auteur, right? I haven't looked for his distinct style in his movies, but Amsterdam, oh, that definitely. Okay, I haven't seen Amsterdam, but when I saw that come out, I was like, oh, that was definitely made by the guy who made American Hustle. Joy, Accidental Love, American Hustle, Silver Linings Playbook, The Fighter, I Heart Huckabees. Oh, Three Kings. What? Shut the fuck up. That's the Three Kings with Ice Cube. Yeah, that was a good one. I enjoyed that movie. That was an enjoyable movie too. Flirting with Disaster, Spanking the Monkey. Okay, I've seen Three Kings, The Fighter, Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle. I haven't seen Joy or Amsterdam, but you notice from Silver Linings Playbook and onward, he's starting to use specific actresses and actors, right? He's using, well, these two in his movie, those two right there, Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. Okay, interesting. So, David O. Russell, I'll have to go check out some of his movies and see about the auteur aspect of him. Okay, Woody Allen. What to say about one of the greatest American collaborators nowadays? He is among our most influential, controversial, and prolific filmmakers. Having said that, his themes explore the meaning of life and love with an explanation mark on death. He has also created great roles for women. His most recent film, for example, Blue Jasmine, gave Kate Blanchett an Oscar for Best Performance in Leading Role. Most recent film. When was this written? 2015. Wow. 10 years ago. Yeah, okay. So this is an old, old list. It's crazy how much a lot of these directors, their filmography hasn't quite changed all that much, unfortunately. Um, the use of subtitles in Annie Hall and split screen became an instant signature to his directing style. The noir style of Manhattan, or noir style, gives a magical quality to the romance. This genius has also become one of those cases where people either love or hate him. And it's not related to his private life made public. It is because Allen used to act in his movies and played neurotic characters that drew the line very clearly. However, more recently, he chose to work behind the camera only and continue to write. Okay, I know Woody Allen for sure. Let's type him in, see what else he's done. Get his full filmography up here. We want director, previous. Okay, Coupe de Chance in 2023, Rifkin's Festival, A Rainy Day in New York, Wonder Wheel. Pooh, haven't seen any of those. Cafe Society, Irrational Man, Magic in the Moonlight, Blue Jasmine, Rome with Love, Midnight in Paris. You Will Meet a Tall, Dark Stranger, Whatever Works, Vicky Cristina Barcelona. This guy's done a lot of fucking movies. Cassandra's Dream, Scoop, Matchpoint, Melinda and Melinda, Anything Else, Hollywood Ending, television, The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, Small Time Crooks, Sweet and Lowdown, Celebrity, Deconstructing Harry, Everyone Says I Love You, Mighty Aphrodite, television, Bullets Over Broadway, Manhattan Murder Mystery, Husbands and Wives, Shadow and Fog, Alice, Crimes and Misdemeanors. He's got, even in the titles, we got Husbands and Wives, we got Shadows and Fog, we got Crimes and Misdemeanors, we got Hannah and Her Sisters. Another Woman, September, Radio Days, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Purple Rose of Caro, Broadway Danny Rose, Zelig. This just keeps going and going and going. Wow, holy balls. This dude has done some serious amount of movies in his life. Wow. Busy fella, I guess. Damn. Okay, Christopher Nolan. Everybody knows Christopher Nolan, right? Nolan has shown a significant amount of work and solidified himself as a writer-director. There is no doubt that his films are definitely Hollywood blockbusters. What brings him to this list is when his work is analyzed, his signature starts to become evident, making him an auteur and reflecting the commercial successes of his films. His characters feel detached from their environment, not a part of this world. Perhaps that helps us understand the fact that most of his films are mostly adaptations of some kind. These characters deal with self doubt and moral ambiguity. His themes are about fear, sacrifice, chaos, and pain, with dark and somber tones due to heavy issues. For example, the Joker in The Dark Knight is one of the most disturbing and intriguing characters on the big screen. Yeah. Again, Christopher Nolan's another one that if you're on Reddit, everybody hates him because you like him. One of those things. Good old classic Reddit. Okay. Let's take a look at this director. Look what he's done. Oppenheimer, Tenet, Dunkirk. Oh, I still haven't seen Dunkirk. I completely fucking forgot about them. Everybody says it's amazing. Interstellar. I love Interstellar. I thought that movie was so good. Dark Knight Rises, Inception, Dark Knight, The Prestige, Batman Begins, all and Insomnia too. Let's throw and Memento too. Let's throw that in. All of those. That's just a fucking long line of really enjoyable movies. You know, some better than others, but Inception, Interstellar, The Prestige, kick-ass fucking movies. Yeah. So, Memento, also another fucking badass. I don't know if any of you have seen Memento, but that one is just amazing. That was with the what is that guy's name? Guy Pearce. Yeah, killer fucking movie. Old one too. What is that in 2000? I don't know, I guess you know that movie. You know, I'm old. That's what it is. It's not that that movie is old. Embrace primalism. Yeah, no, I'm down. I got a film theory worth dreaming. Yeah, let's check it out. What is your film theory that is worth dreaming? I am intrigued. Absolutely. You got me. You pulled me in. Let's see what this is. I like your name too. Embrace primalism. Very primal. Oh, and number one here, Gus Van Sant. I was just fucking thinking of Gus Van Sant. When they said the name uh Todd Haynes, and they talked about gay cinema. The first when they said the words "gay cinema," Gus Van Sant instantly popped into my head. Um, Gus is more known to the general public as a director, but My Own Private Idaho is one of the earlier and more daring of his screenplays. From early on in his career, he established common themes such as the creation of alternate families and personal journeys, friendships, and mentor-student relationships. Even though he worked for the Hollywood studio system, he is most influenced by European filmmakers. Oh, this is a different person than I'm thinking of. Goodwill Hunting, an exploration of man's soul. Finding Forrester explores the friendship between an African American accepted to an important private school while befriending a novelist. And Milk, a man fighting for civil rights for the gay community. Okay, yeah, this is the guy that I thought we were talking about. These films were commercially successful, and Gus had the opportunity to show the world his signature. He is also known for being a master collaborator, which can bring the best out of actors with the characters they portray. He also prefers to shoot his films mainly on location instead of on sets. Okay. We'll have to look up the rest of his filmography because I don't quite remember what else is there. Did you? Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm so intrigued. I was waiting for you to answer. I'm like, what is he talking about here? This is a little more intriguing than the list I got. A little search for Dr. Amon Hillman, or you can search YT playlist selection of the Sybil for an intro. Video at the bottom of the playlist. Don't have to watch the whole thing. I found the heart of the beast, and the church is right behind you. I found the heart of the beast, and the church is right behind you. I don't know why that sounds so ominous, but that sounds very ominous. Dr. Amon Hillman. So who's Dr. Amon Hillman? Give me some background on this guy because I don't know that name. And if I'm supposed to know that name, then fuck me, I'm stupid, whatever. But I am intrigued to know who that is. Dr. Amon Hillman. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, Gus Van Zant's films. Let's take a look at what he's got going on here. Okay. Don't worry, he won't get far on foot. That's kind of a mouthful. 2018. The Sea of Trees, The Promised Land, My Own Private River. Wow, I don't know any of those. Restless, Milk. Okay, I know Milk. 8. Paranoid Park, To Each His Own Cinema. I guess he just directed a segment of that. Last Days. Elephant. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I thought this was a guy that did the movie Elephant. And didn't he do the movie Kids too? Finding Forrester, Good Will Hunting, Psycho, 1998. Is that the remake of Psycho? Is what we're looking at here? What is this? And Gus Van Sant's remake. Okay. Wow, I didn't know Gus Van Sant did a remake of Psycho. Look at that. Okay. Get away, Marvel. Let's see. A lot of music videos. Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. A lot of music videos here. Oh, Under the Bridge from Red Hot Chili Peppers. My Own Private Idaho. Drugstore Cowboy. Wow, gosh, I forgot about that. Drugstore Cowboy. That is a really good one. So I've definitely seen enough of this guy's films that I could probably, go back, watch a few of them, and give you an idea of like what sort of signature style he brings to the table that makes him such an auteur. But I'd have to go back and look at him though, for sure. But interesting. Here, I'm gonna go. I am. Okay. Interesting. Okay. American classicist, ancient Greek and Latin nerd. Oh, well, there it is. American classicist, known for his reinterpretation of Christianity. Oh, huh. Danny Jones podcast. You know what? I think I have heard of this from my little brother. Let's see. From prepubescent. Yes, I have. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Um, with the venom, right? Used to get high on the venom and then needed to take something from the prepubescent boys in order to, I believe it stop the venom, right? As a cure for the venom. I'm on the right track here, right? Yeah. Honestly, I don't know exactly about film theory, embrace primalism. I don't know if that goes in film theory, but I actually do have this written down in my phone to be a conspiracy theory that I'm going to go over on Conspiracy Theory Thursdays. Every Thursday on my channel, I go over about 2 hours of conspiracy theories. Passion of the Christ is definitely one way to put it. Yeah. uh, yeah. So I have been very much considering going over this. I have no idea how Twitch is going to handle me going over this. We're just going to have to see, to be honest. I mean, it's up on my screen. Anybody who sees this can absolutely read it. I'm not cutting it out. But I was definitely planning on doing about a 2 hour, not like a super deep dive, because it's going to take a little more. It would take a little more than 2 hours to do a full deep dive into this particular topic, but at least a 2 hour run over the basics of it. So one of these conspiracy theory Thursdays. Every Thursday, I like to do a 2 hour on conspiracy theories. We did it yesterday. Yesterday was kind of just like a kind of bullshitting around, kind of a fun one. It was Nicolas Cage as a vampire. So it's kind of more on the fun side than it is the controversial side, because this particular, this, I wouldn't say necessarily a conspiracy theory, but, this particular belief, this guy, what he's saying, tends to piss off a lot of people. They tend to get really offended and worked up over it, which, it doesn't bother me, but it's not the same as Nicolas Cage as a vampire. Nobody gets too upset when you put that out there, right? You know what I mean? But I definitely appreciate the suggestion, though. It's definitely on my list of Thursday streams to do. So if you like that stuff, you definitely need to tune in on that particular Thursday. I don't know if I can throw like specific notifications to people on Twitch. I just literally just started doing this a few weeks ago. But I am going to be um, definitely going to be doing one. So if I figure out how to link people to it, I'll definitely link you to the live stream, or at least the YouTube video if you're on YouTube too. But yeah, I appreciate the suggestion though, because that is some very interesting stuff. And I very much do have an open mind. I very much like hearing about that sort of thing. So I will be honest, I don't know if that falls into so I don't know if that falls into film theory though. I don't know if that's the exact same thing. So, but definitely falls on my Thursday though. Definitely falls on my Thursdays. So I got a whole list of shit to go over on my Thursdays though. I mean, I can't. My little brother is very much into. I mean, I guess for lack of a better word, it's conspiracy theories, just because there's a lot of people that really don't want to talk about it. But he's got a lot of esoteric knowledge on things people don't like talking about. And so, yeah, he's got a whole list of shit for me to go over on Thursdays. That's probably at some point gonna get me kicked off Twitch. So, not as acceptable as Nicolas Cage as a vampire. But if you like that sort of stuff, definitely recommend Thursdays. I don't know if you enjoy films. Film Buff Fridays might not be the thing for you. This is a little too lightweight, I might imagine. But you know, either way, though, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate that suggestion too. That is a very good suggestion. So thank you. So anyway, there was our list of auteur directors, right? Okay. And we kind of have a general idea of what that means, right? We went over a couple of those directors, we went over a couple of their filmographies, a couple of the very specific styles that you can get from their movies, specific indicators from their movies that you can pull out. And oh shit, are you okay? I don't know what the hey he means, but good. Hey, that's awesome. Whatever kind of films you're making, good for you. That's awesome. Maybe that's why you clicked on this then. So, would you consider yourself an auteur then? Embrace primalism. Would you be an auteur filmmaker? I'm intrigued to hear this. But so we went through some of these other film directors that are auteurs, or at least tentatively could be called an auteur. Now we're just going to dive really quickly into auteur theory history, right? Get at least a rough understanding of the history and where this came from, right? So let's go ahead and run through the motions, okay? The auteur notion first emerged in France in the 1950s. However, the phrase has been used in film studios for a long time before that. American films were forbidden in France because of the German occupation during World War II. However, following the war, American films swapped the French theaters. French movie critics were eager for good cinema at the time, so they started studying French and American cinema. These critics from the film journal, I don't know how to say that, Cahiers du Cinéma, I'm going to call it du Cinéma, accused French films of relying solely on the script and ignoring the visual aspect of cinema. As a result, they believed that these films had low aesthetic value and lacked social realism. Critics were equally tired of seeing the same old films made and produced by the same senior directors. In reaction to this predicament, the Du Cinema group defined auteur cinema as superior pictures with a distinct visual style and ideological and psychological baggage. So this all kind of stems from a bit of an argument between French and American cinema, and specifically French critics, or critics of French films, decided they wanted to create this new idea of what it means to be an auteur and to author your own films. They contended that American directors had limited control over the production process and did not preclude them from achieving auteur status. As a result, they established a unique award for directors such as Alfred Hitchcock, Howard Hanks, John Ford, and Samuel Fuller. Another type of auteurism is absolute authorship, in which filmmakers have complete control over their films. In France, examples include Jean-Luc Godard, Agnes Varda, and in Germany, Wim Wenders, and in the United States, David Lynch. Oh, yeah, I can't believe we didn't see him on any of the lists for auteur directors. David Lynch. Right. So here's some early auteurs. Several instances of filmmakers played dominating creative roles on their projects before the phrase was created. performing multiple functions as directors, authors, producers, and sometimes even actors. This includes silent era comedians like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, as well as tragic filmmakers like D.W. Griffith. I don't know if they mean by tragic, they mean like tragedies versus comedies, but even popular movie performers such as Douglas Fairbanks in his films Arizona, Robin Hood, and The Thief of Baghdad had earned enough business power to take on many creative roles. And here's a whole list of clips for him. I'll have this all linked down in the comments. With the expansion of the studio system and the big studio's emphasis on assembly style movie making, it became less frequent for a single person to work in many creative positions on a single picture. In other circumstances during that period, filmmakers who achieved great artistic or commercial success were able to exert more control over their productions. Alfred Hitchcock, shooting and producing his movies at American studios by the end of 1940, was by far the most well-known example for this throughout the studio era. Yeah, we did see him on one of the lists. I was pretty blown away to not see him on that second list that we watched because, he definitely has a distinct style. Hitchcock was an outlier, though. Hardly any other directors in Hollywood had that level of artistic freedom. Another example is Orson Welles, who arrived in Hollywood with a successful track record in the New York stage and radio. As a result, Citizen Kane, in which Welles co-wrote, directed, produced, and starred, was granted almost complete production control. There's a couple of the Auteur Theory videos on Citizen Kane and Hitchcock, which would be fun to get into today, but I already have a couple videos picked out for you. Unfortunately, for various reasons, including Citizen Kane was not a smash hit in the United States. Also, Welles never had the same kind of control over film during his lifetime. And this brings us to directors of the French New Wave. Nevertheless, a few names have become nearly associated with auteur theory as it is taught in cinema schools, which have yet to be acknowledged. French film, particularly the French New Wave, is often regarded as the true birthplace of auteur theory. It's entirely accurate in terms of several of the filmmakers' individual and creative approaches. For example, early French filmmakers like André Bazin and Alexander Ostrich laid the framework for directors to gain more control over their productions. Other technological advances in the camera and the filmmaking process lessened the need for more considerable finances and more sophisticated projects, allowing filmmakers to film additional run and gun to explore their art in greater depth. By the 1950s, several French film critics associated with the French cinema publication, Du Cinema, criticized contemporary film directors for being too faithful to the plot and not powerful enough. Some of the Du Cinema critics would establish the careers of some of the most well-known figures in French New Wave and auteur theory, including movie critic François Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, and Agnes Varda. Man, I am so bad with French names. Oof, brutal. There's the Truffaut fella on Auteur Theory. Oh, it's only a minute and 42. We'll probably watch this video, see what he has to say. And we're still going into it. Let's see. The most well-known modern auteur filmmakers. So, following the outbursts of French New Wave, the notion of auteur cinema has become a global trend. As a result, filmmakers worldwide took on more personal roles in their initiatives to tell more life anecdotes, discover reoccurring patterns in their films, and create a constant artistic ethnicity and a cumulative director's artistic vision. There are undoubtedly many names missing from this list. Still, to give you a sense of style, some of the auteur director criteria and careers of numerous renowned directors who could be called faithful auteurs, here are the most notable current auteur filmmakers. And we've already been through a list. We don't need to hit it again, but you got Wes Anderson, Terrence Malick. Keep going, giving us a whole list of Paul Thomas Anderson. Going to get a whole list of his movies. Todd Hayes, Woody Allen. Is this just a list copying the other guy? Gus Van Sant. The future of auteur filmmakers. Okay, let's go back and listen to Mr. Tafont was his name, the French guy. We're going to listen to what he had to say about auteur theory. Let's take a listen. Hit the YouTube screen.
Que je voulais poser, c'était en Amérique, tout le monde connaît ce qu'on appelle les Auteur Theory, qui n'est pas exactement ce que ça a été en France, où c'était la politique des auteurs, qui a été commencée par vous, par Bazin et par tout un tas de gens dans les années 50. Et je crois que la preuve de ce qui est valable dans cette théorie, c'est on pourrait le trouver dans votre propre film, dans le sens que vous êtes vraiment auteur.
Oui, la politique des auteurs, c'était l'idée que les films n'étaient pas des... Que, bien sûr, les films se font en équipe, mais que où quelqu'un a quelque chose à dire, où quelqu'un a des idées sur la vie et sur le cinéma et sur le monde. Et alors tout ce qu'il fait est intéressant, même si un tel film est un peu moins bien que celui d'avant. Ou bien c'est quelqu'un qui fait son travail de façon anonyme et ce n'est pas intéressant. C'était ça la politique des auteurs. C'était né d'une phrase de Giraudoux qui disait « Il n'y a pas de pièce de théâtre, il n'y a que des auteurs ». Giraudoux voulait dire « Il y a le bloc Claudel, le bloc Giraudoux, le bloc Molière, le reste, les pièces, une pièce réussie par hasard n'a pas d'intérêt ». C'était ça l'idée. Et d'autre part, cette politique des auteurs avait un sens dans la critique française. Elle était, pour le cinéma français, elle disait au fond que n'importe quel film de Cocteau ou de Robert Bresson était plus intéressant, même si éventuellement le film n'était pas réussi, que n'importe quel film de Jean Delannoy ou de metteurs en scène qui travaillaient en adaptant des chefs-d'œuvre, mais de façon anonyme, disons.
Okay. Well, that's what Mr. Truffaut has to say about this. Let's click back up here. I don't know if you're still there, Embrace Primalism. I'm very intrigued to hear what you have to say about this, like what kind of films you make. That's still on my mind. So, if you're still there, you got to let me know. Piqued my interest. So, okay, now that we kind of have a good, not a good, like this certainly is, I can always appreciate fully contextualized, therefore their won't stand in time. Interesting. Okay. And can always appreciate a specialist input. Also, they pay attention to a certain type of film. Okay, well, so this auteur theory, then, like, so I mean, I take it from it that you agree with it, but don't feel like any modern filmmakers are actually auteurs, then, maybe, is what I'm getting from this. At least not modern day filmmakers. I'm still intrigued to hear what kind of films you make, though. Given the topics that you are interested in, I am kind of interested to hear what kind of films you would be making. Okay, so but yeah, that was your basic rundown of French New Wave, where this auteur theory comes from, right? All right, so we get a rough idea. It's definitely not the full picture. Okay, you can deep dive, and I'll give you some sources where you can really deep dive into where auteur theory comes from and what exactly what various different people within French New Wave cinema actually had to say about it, what their specific opinions were on auteur theory, and how they what's the word I'm looking for? How they contributed to the idea as it evolved over time. But for what we're really trying to understand here, just for the sake of knowing what it is how to apply auteur theory to analyzing and reviewing a film. Really, that's all this is, right? We're not trying to become experts on this, right? We're not trying to become the auteur theory experts in the room. We're trying to become auteur theory specialists. We are simply just trying to understand what it is. So when, your fancy pants friend says, "Do you know what auteur theory is?" you can be like, "Well, I'm not that fucking stupid." And, you can give them a rough idea of where it came from. But I will we'll go over a web page, and then I will also link that web page in the YouTube comments for different sources for under a better understanding of auteur theory. But for now, let's take auteur theory. We're going to see what the Media Insider has to say about this. I've gone to this guy's YouTube channel a couple of times because it's pretty entertaining. He's got an entertaining channel. He does have a lot to say, a lot of good stuff to say as far as different type about film theory specifically and the elements of film theory. We'll be going over his channel a lot when we hit film types and different types of shots. By the way, not to, I had to look up what Jove Day was because I had no idea what that is. I didn't know that was Thursday. So interesting. Oh, see, okay. I'm glad you said. Thank you for clarifying what exactly you meant. So yeah, at the beginning of the stream we went over like the three main aspects of auteur theory, or I guess the three rules of auteur theory that were set out by Andrew, what was his name? Sasson or something to that effect. And that third ambiguous one, or well, as you said, the more elusive, I would, put it, um putting your soul into the film. I think I actually even have it how they said it in this particular article. Or no, that's not the one. Interior meaning is what they refer to it as in this particular article. Um, yeah, that's very elusive. So you're of the opinion that yeah, we got great technicians, right? That's important to be considered an auteur is to have that great technician. But that third rule just isn't there. We're not getting it. There isn't soul in the movies. Art is deeper than the footage on screen. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, what you're putting on the screen has to have, I mean, in order to be considered an auteur, especially, not necessarily that a movie has to have that, right? And at least for me, in order to be enjoyable, I can enjoy a movie even as, pure fucking action movie schlock. I can have a blast watching it. I don't need it to be deep, but it does seem like if you want to be an auteur, you definitely have to be open. What was the term? Another somebody else that we had gone over used was you have to be transparent in your views about the world, yourself, life. You definitely have to be vulnerable enough to put that out there, and that's a lot more than just what you're shooting on the screen. And so yeah, I mean that is very interesting idea. Modern day film directors lack that third element, that soul, that putting your soul into the movie. And I can definitely see that. Absolutely. God, for fuck's sakes, if you think like everything that Marvel, the whole Marvel franchise is just probably the most obvious example. I think a lot of what Disney is putting out nowadays is probably an obvious example too of what you're talking about, where it's not that there isn't a lot of soul, it's like there's almost zero fucking soul. There isn't any at all. Like the whole I mean in some of those cases I would even argue that there's a lack of technical ability in a lot of some of these modern day films that come out. There's some movies that have come out where I'm like, what the fuck did AI write this? I myself have not made enough films to be able to, like I put the disclaimer out there. I fucking blow at telling if somebody's a good actor or not. I can sit in a room full of people, watch a movie and be like, well, yeah, Kristen Stewart was really good. And everybody's like, dude, that fucking sucked. I'm like, oh, fuck. Okay, I'll get online. And everybody's like, bro, what are you talking about? She fucking blew. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, I guess I suck at acting, right? And I suck at knowing what a good actor looks like. Same with special effects. I suck at being able to judge special effects. So and when it comes to filmmaking in general, I haven't made films. I guess I made 2 or 3 films when I was in high school for like local, there was a class that we had in school for filmmaking, and I got to make a couple movies, short movies, and that was nice. But we're talking like 5 minute movies here. You know what I'm saying? That you make with your friends. So don't have any experience as a filmmaker. So can't really, that's why I'm doing this, spending 2 hours every Friday, trying to learn a bit more about like shots and angles, color palettes, what all these things could potentially mean in a filmmaker's work because I don't understand that aspect of it. It's right over my fucking head. I just don't know enough. I can't claim that I do. I haven't looked into it. But when it comes to narrative aspects of a movie, I have spent time. Did go to college, took classes for writing, literature classes, and definitely understand the more narrative aspects of making a movie, and or at least the narrative aspects of storytelling. I just had a whole video last Friday on storytelling, definitely something I have a little bit more knowledge in, so I can actually talk about it with a little bit more. I know what I'm talking about a little bit more, right? I don't have to spend 2 hours every Friday hearing what other people have to say about it because I'm so fucking clueless on the subject. But I can say that modern day directors, for me, when it comes to the narrative elements, blow my fucking mind, right? Like I'm just so blown that they're blow my mind in a bad way, right? Where I'm just so like lost and like, how did they make these narrative choices? In some cases, we have zero character arcs, zero, there's no, these characters themselves are such copy cutouts of everything that's already been done a million times over. It just blows my mind. There's no originality. Interesting. So yeah, I mean, you feel like there's like, I mean, I guess essentially like zero, little next to no respect for everything that came before. Um, and or at least maybe not even respect, but absolutely no knowledge whatsoever about these. Like for example, like the example you made, why ancients worship the serpent and things like that, right? So you're just, well, I mean, if you don't know about it, you certainly can't put any of it in a movie, even on a metaphorical level. You can't even, make a visual metaphor for that sort of a concept, right? Um, and I feel like this kind of dives a little into what is it, symbiotics? No, not symbiotics, semiotics, right? Fuck, do I got that right? Semiotics, semiotics. It is something like that. Shit. Yeah, semiotics. The system of studying sign processes and the communication of meaning. Well, no, maybe that's not what you're talking about. You might not be talking about semiotics. Okay, I'm thinking of something different. You're talking about just plain like literal historical symbolism, historical, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like historical systems of belief, and just a lack, like modern day filmmakers don't understand any of that. Am I getting you right on that? Or am I completely lost in the sauce on that one? Yeah, you're gonna have to fill me in on that. Definitely clarify like you did last time, right? Pretend like you're talking to a retarded 5-year-old. Do that, and then I can keep up with the conversation. All right, but yeah. So in the meantime, this is what we went over a brief telling of the history of auteur theory, just so you guys can get that tiny small understanding of the history, where it at least came from, and some of the players that were involved. Again, I'll give you some better sources to dive deeper into it. But for now, we're going to check out what the Media Insider has to say about auteur theory. This guy, he is a film, not necessarily he's a film studies teacher who makes decent YouTube videos. At the very least, he's technically good. He's technically proficient at making videos and good at explaining himself. So I wanted to give you just a quick few minutes to hear what he has to say about auteur theory, and hopefully he can help illuminate any questions you might have up to this point. And then we're going to deep dive. Let's see, what do I got here? See, so okay, then I'm gonna give you some good writers into the particular topic of auteur theory, some fallout and reaction, some of the criticisms to auteur theory, and what might be like where we can go from here, how auteur theory can be applied to modern day films. And then lastly, we're going to actually do this in practice. We're going to try looking at different auteur auteur directors and take 6 minutes or so to analyze Wes Anderson, and I believe David Fincher was this guy. And if we had time, oh no, I've definitely got a whole series of books that I wanted to give to you guys for understanding auteur theory. And then we are going to maybe take a look at this Lindsay Ellis's video on Michael Bay and auteur theory applied to him. But first, let's take a look at what Media Insider has to say about auteur theory and the origins of auteur theory in general.
Hi everyone, today I'd like to introduce you to a film debate which has waged for years, the Auteur Theory. The best way...
I'm going to throw you on the YouTube screen, so if I pick my nose, you don't see it.
For me to introduce it is like this. What do you personally consider to be a great film? Quickly consider some of your favorite films. Can you quantify why they are good? Do you think it's all about story, in which case the writing is probably the most important step? Or is it the director and how their masterful skill with film translates words to screen? Or maybe you acknowledge that film is actually a collaborative process involving hundreds of different people. Auteur theory puts the emphasis on the director, saying that master directors are able to make a good film out of a bad script. So today we're going to be putting that principle to the test. Now the first thing I want to point out is this isn't technically a theory. It was misinterpreted as auteur theory by Andrew Saris as he kind of developed the work that had already been started by someone else. It was originally introduced as auteur policy when it was first written about by French New...
Okay, I'm glad that we went and clicked on this video. I completely forgot about author policy here, auteur policy. So this is important to know. This is that kind of missing key that we didn't get from that article. the French New Wave and auteur policy. But interesting, this guy, says Andrew Saris, who wrote down those three rules that we had earlier, right? The Oh shoot, let's see if I can remember them off the top of my head. Basic competency, a specific style, a signature style, excuse me, and three, interior meaning or the soul, right? So those three rules were made by Andrew Saris, and he misinterpreted auteur theory according to Media Insider. So let's see what he has to say.
New Wave director Francois Truffaut. In post-World War II France, a group of cinephiles.
By the way, just want to point out, I did nail that guy's name, Truffaut. I'm pretty sure that I said Truffaut, so that's a plus for me. I have such a hard time with French words and names, so I fucking murdered them.
Featuring such legendary directors as Jean-Luc Godard and of course Truffaut, noticed that so much of the cinema being produced in France was wooden and lacking identity. Films like these were more interested in preserving classical texts and bringing them to the big screen as safely and as unspoilt as possible.
De liqueur grisante, et elle se serait rendue.
It was made all the more obvious when they compared these films to certain Hollywood directors such as Hitchcock and Orson Welles, who they felt were able to put their own mark on their films in much the same way that great art can be immediately recognizable as a Monet or a Van Gogh. The group would study film night and day, trying to ascertain how cinema could be more personal, more daring, and this culminated in an article called A Certain Tendency of French Cinema, written by Francois Truffaut. This was essentially a call to arm to filmmakers, encouraging them to steer away from cinema du papa, or dad cinema, where everything was safe, unexciting, not personal. And they actually encouraged them to try and see their use of the camera exactly the same as a painter uses a brush. Filmmakers should be daring and unique. He argued that a great director could transcend the confines of a script and imprint their own identity, irrespective of the story. Perhaps this is also why so much revolutionary French New Wave cinema relied on improvisation rather than script. Directors who are able to speak visually like this could be defined as an auteur, literally an author, no different to the author of a book. The policy that he put forward identified two key areas that could be used to distinguish between a mere technical director and an auteur. Firstly, he identified the film's aesthetic, mise-en-scene and mise-en-shot, as key to identifying the work of an auteur. This is the visual style of the film, including the lighting, the set design, the costume, and equally, how the camera shoots them. An auteur will present their own consistent interpretation of the world in their visual style. I've made a separate video all about mise-en-scene, which I'll make a link to at the end of this video. So let's put this idea...
Okay, we're going to pause right there and we're going to come back to this because he's going to put everything he just talked to into context using David Fincher's movies. So we'll come back for that at a later date. But yeah, so it is, to me, what I get from that little bit is, excuse me, I had a burp. Auteur theory, regardless of what people feel about it nowadays, if it's valid to call any director an auteur, because that's certainly, as we'll get to here in a minute, a criticism of auteur theory, is you just can't apply it to any modern day directors as much as you would like to. It's just not quite there. And, regardless of what your thoughts are on that, because that could certainly be a possibility, you could certainly be correct in that. Again, not having a lot of experience with auteur theory myself, I'm not really in a position to argue that. But it certainly seems like auteur theory really did have an importance to the film industry, really, to the history of film. It really noted when movies went from essentially just remaking these classical stories word for word, and directors themselves were only tasked with the idea of just making very distinct, very specific pieces of work that did not have this soul and this quality to it, where essentially like you can run wild with this form of media, this art form, and really create something unique and beautiful and extraordinary, and as a consequence, powerful. I think auteur theory, particularly in French New Wave, is where this realization seems to have hit some of these people, some of these old filmmakers and critics of film. And that is where, that became an aspect of filmmaking, at least not for every filmmaker, but at least for some, right? So, that brings us to this list over here. Yeah, it's an AI list. Fucking sue me, all right? Um, I just wanted to compile a handful of people here that are certainly worth looking into when it comes to auteur theory. Certainly worth researching. Further research is warranted into this particular topic. You're not going to come away from my 2 hour stream as an expert in auteur theory by any means. That's not the point. The point is to give you at least a good, rough understanding of the basics. And if you are intrigued enough, then to look into it and then give you some avenues by which you can look into it. So, the most influential auteur film theorists are Andrew Sarris, Andrew Bazin, and Alexander Ostruk, with Francois Truffaut also playing a key role. Sarris popularized the term auteur theory in the United States, while Bazin and Ostruk's ideas laid the foundation for the theory in France. Truffaut, a director of the French New Wave, was a prominent figure in developing the theory and championed certain directors through his policy of the authors. That's auteur policy that Media Insider was talking about. So, key figures: Andrew Sarris. Sarris, a prominent film critic, coined the term auteur theory and popularized it in the United States. He argued that a director's unique vision and style should be considered the primary influence on a film. He was the one that gave us those three main rules that we discussed earlier of auteur theory. That in order to be considered an auteur, a director has to have basic competency in making a film, has to have a distinct style or a signature style, and has to have a inner meaning, interior meaning. Fuck balls. It's going to take me so long to remember that. Interior meaning, right? Okay, so that all came from Andrew Sarris, who, according to Media Insider, misinterpreted the general idea of policy of authors or auteur policy during French New Wave. Okay, and then we have Andre Bazin. Bazin, along with Ostruk, laid the groundwork for auteur theory in France with his writings and work in the Du Cinema film magazine. Okay, Alexander Ostruk. Ostruk's ideas, alongside Bazin's, contributed to the development of auteur theory by emphasizing the director's role as the primary author of a film. Right, so that obviously is the key idea of, if you really just had to give somebody a single sentence of auteur theory, it would be the emphasis of the director as the primary author of a film. And then you have Francois Truffaut. Francois Truffaut, a key figure in the French New Wave, championed the auteur policy and identified directors like Alfred Hitchcock as possessing a distinct personal style. So he's the one that generally championed the idea, or made it, I suppose, started pointing at other directors and saying, these are the guy, these are some people who very clearly have a distinct style in filmmaking and are thus evidence of auteur theory, right? So the core of auteur theory, again, what we've kind of already established, auteur theory posits that a film director is the primary creative force behind a film, influencing its overall style, themes, and meaning. It emphasizes the director's ability to leave a distinct imprint on their work, reflecting their personal vision and style, right? And this is, going through a list here of other important people, names of people who have been tied to auteur theory: Alfred Hitchcock, Federico Fellini, Stanley Kubrick. I can't believe nobody has brought his name up yet. Yeah, there's that Francois Truffaut, Ingmar Bergman. So, this is a good list of people to start. These four specifically right here are a good list of people to start looking into as far as getting a more deep dive. If I continue and do a second stream on auteur theory itself, just to kind of get us into that deep dive territory, which, I'll consider, like, if I could get, if somebody really wanted that and threw it in the comment section of the YouTube video, then I would definitely make that video. And it would primarily focus on these four fellas right here, and specifically what they said about auteur theory and how their ideas created auteur theory. So that would be a good place to start looking. Those are your main auteur theorists as far as important, notable people. Now we're going to kind of deep dive into what the reactions to this were, at least some of the criticisms, right? So, understandably, some people don't like this whole thing at all. Chief among them was critic Pauline Kael. She and Sarris went at it for some time over the value of this idea. The end result probably doesn't matter because it's of course inconclusive. Oh, well, that's a bummer. A lot of young filmmakers came up around this conversation: Lucas, Spielberg, Scorsese, and Coppola, to name a few. This debate had a big influence on them, and they had a big influence on how we make movies now. it all did sort of lead to an era of the director, which resulted in some crashing and burning in the 1970s when directors like Michael Cimino and Peter Bog- Bogdanovich were perhaps given too much control. Hmm. I wonder what those guys did. That would be intriguing to look into as well. What exactly happened? What was the crashing and burning that happened with those directors, right? The reality is, directors like John Ford, Alfred Hitchcock, and Howard Hawks were straightforward in their efforts. They were just trying to tell good stories efficiently. They weren't trying to be artists who shaped the culture. In every interview with them, you can tell as much. I mean, I think we would have to look at some interviews to know that for sure, but we'll take their word for it at the moment. Ford almost comes off as insulted that anyone would waste time asking such questions about movie making. Maybe their focus on simply doing a good job and trying to entertain people is what made them artists in the first place. It's what helped them elevate the craft. That's a very interesting theory. Interesting way to put it. I do think there is, at least some, what's the term? What's the word? There is some value in that approach of just doing your job, trying to entertain people. There is merit to that idea, and merit to the idea that perhaps that's what you should do, as a director, that is your primary focus, is to make something entertaining. But I think there's a lot of merit to the opposite, or people who would argue against that as well, right? I think that there's merit to the argument that no, directors do have the power and can create much more powerful pieces of work if they are putting that extra emphasis on actually being artistic, using this as an artistic medium through which they can illustrate what their most important beliefs are, particularly about the world. And, let's hear what they have to say. Issues with auteur theory. Okay, let's little deep dive into this. Auteur theory's focus on the director has led some to contend that it denies the importance of the screenwriter. Others follow in literary theorist Roland Barthes' steps to say that authorial and directorial intent should not affect analysis and that the text should stand alone. That's a pretty big one. We're hearing this for the first time at 2 hours in roughly an hour and 40 minutes into the stream, hour and 40 minutes into the stream. Yeah, we're hearing this for the first time, but this is everybody's biggest beef with auteur theory, or at least one of the bigger beefs, is the text should stand by itself. You should be able to analyze a film on its own without giving a flying fuck what the directorial intent of the film was, or what the signature style of the filmmaker is. Okay, so if you do a little research on yourself, you'll find that's a pretty regular thing that people bitch about. If we have time to deep dive into Miss Lindsay Ellis's video on auteur theory, that tends to be a big bugaboo that she has. So it's definitely been echoed by other people in the past. So director versus screenwriter. Some critics argue that auteur theory adulates the director while ignoring the screenwriter. In a series of essays on Citizen Kane, film critic Pauline Kael, oh, there's Pauline again, claims that oft-called auteur Orson Welles should not be lauded for directing the film. Instead, she says, more credit should be given to the screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz. Film theorist David Kippen agrees that the screenwriter should be thought of as a movie's principal author. A filmgoer seeking out pictures written by, say, Eric Roth or Charlie Kaufman won't always see a masterpiece, but he'll see fewer clunkers than he would following even a brilliant director like John Borman or an intelligent actor like Jeff Goldblum. He writes of why the screenwriter has utmost influence on a film. It's all a matter of betting on the fastest horse instead of the most highly touted or the prettiest. Interesting. Okay. And the death of an author. Alternatively, film critics who take a deconstructionist or textual approach find issue in auteur theory's focus on any kind of authorial intent. Instead, they believe that meaning should be excavated from the film itself. Again, we kind of highlighted that earlier, or in viewer response to the film instead. Despite these issues, auteur theory is still a popular approach to film analysis. Directorial influence and artistry continues to fascinate viewers and critics alike. Yeah, I certainly think it's an avenue that's worth approaching. I don't see any problem, like harm, in choosing to analyze films that you like based off of what could have potentially have been the director's intent, right? I don't think there's an issue with that. I myself enjoy doing that with some of my favorite directors, right? I have my specific directors. I am a Quentin Tarantino fan. Reddit be damned. I enjoy what he has to say, and when it comes to analyzing his film, I definitely enjoy analyzing what the potential intent of his film was. What did he mean to say? Oh, there you go. Welcome back, Embrace Primalism. I have been waiting to see what you had to say about that. Yeah, I'm very intrigued because you seem to know quite a bit about this topic. Let's see, for almost 2,000 years, our entire world has undergone a decontextualization where religion, magic, the symbols, history, etc. have all become untethered from the anthropological grounding. Well, I definitely agree there. Yeah, I feel like that is a kind of a consequence of our current modernity, right? I mean, in my personal opinion, I don't know, that's certainly not a professional opinion, but just in my very humble, uneducated opinion, I definitely believe that that has all been, as you said, untethered from our anthropological grounding, or just untethered from us as a society, due to, I think it just kind of comes as a consequence of what's the word that I'm trying to look for? Not to shit on it, like secularism, not to shit on anybody out there who is a secularist, not to, I myself am not a very religious person, but just to say that it came with, well, a lot of what I would consider to be modernity, a focus on science, which I don't think is necessarily bad, but it has its pros and its cons. And I do think one of those cons of such having such a society that is so heavily focused on science, over things like religion and magic, means that our society is going to untether our own, our own on history, or as you say, decontextualize, where we're going to kind of take our history and just take these bits and pieces out of it for the sake of even, maybe even like a sense of shame might even be a reason why some people do it. But let's continue what you were saying. Prehistory can be inferred. Enough literature exists to paint the picture. Everyone should know what a fetus communion was, but we don't know what that cup means in the Bible. That's very true. Yeah. To be honest, I don't entirely know exactly. I have a very rough picture of it based off of what my little brother, who has read more into this, has told me. But yeah, no, I myself don't have a good idea of what that exactly is neither. Um, Babylon's or Jesus's. Knowing history is just one part. Then there is understanding the present and being able to divine. Interesting. So there is knowing the present and being able to divine. Yeah, well, so yeah, no, I think you're probably correct. Like a lot of this, I think a lot of this has probably just been watered down for people's sake. A lot of what you're talking about there specifically, you like fetus communion, for example, specifically, a lot of that is probably just watered down for modern sensibilities, I guess maybe is probably the best way that I could think of putting it. It's a reason why, like when we talk about, specifically, we were what you were talking about a little bit earlier, um, Mr. Doctor, let me scroll up, Dr. Amon Hillman. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. If I'm butchering it, that's my bad. But Dr. Amon Hillman, when it comes to some of the things that he has to say, it's pisses a lot of modern day people off. Instead of, like you yourself even had to ask, are you open minded, right? Because the reality is, if the implication, I guess, being that if I'm not open minded, what did you think my reaction would be to you bringing up Dr. Amon Hillman? It would probably be, throwing a hissy fit, maybe, or completely rejecting it outright, or even cursing you, being like, get the fuck out of here, you dick, why even bring that up, something to that effect, right? I think a lot of a lot of the decontextualization that you're talking about happened for the sake of appeasing modern sensibilities. Is the only, I guess, the best way that I can think of putting it, right? I don't know if that's entirely the most accurate way of putting it. It's just the best way that I know of putting it. So do with that what you will. I guess that's not to comment on whether or not I think it's right or wrong. It certainly seems like you feel like that's definitely the wrong way to go about it. I do feel like it's wrong to not know what these things were or where these things came from. It's certainly wrong to dust them under the rug because it is knowledge, right? Taking any amount of knowledge and hiding it for the sake of not offending your own sensibilities, it only serves to make you dumber, right? You're going to inevitably, there's going to be aspects of the world that you just don't understand then, because you refuse to, is what it really amounts to. You refuse to understand these particular aspects of whether it's history or current worlds, any of that, And so, yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents on it. I don't know how you feel about it. But that is a very, yeah, I do think you're correct though. I definitely think that you're, um, what the point that you're making there, I don't have any what is the word, qualms with it. I don't have any beef with it. I think you're absolutely correct on that. Yeah, like that's definitely a thing that has happened. I guess I'm just saying that perhaps that's why it has happened. Maybe it's just to avoid offending modern sensibilities. And in general, I think that's probably not a good. Yeah, it's probably not. You know, the idea that we are completely decontextualized uh ultimately, I guess maybe cheapens, I guess how do I want to say this? Uh cheapens existence, at least in regards to the fact that we forget where we came from. And when you forget where you come from, you lost your reference for how far you have come, you as an individual, but humanity as well. And you know, when you lose your roots like that, you're losing a piece of yourself. When you forget where you come from and where humanity has come from, you certainly lose a very important piece of who you are, because that's always going to be a part of who you are, right? You know, just to bring it down to a simpler metaphor, where you come from, the city you were born in, is always going to be a part of who you are, and it's always going to be a part of your history, whether you like it or not. And if you choose to ignore that, you are taking a big chunk of who you are, whether you like it or not, and erasing it. And although I think a lot of people in that specific example would say, you know, there's some things that we would all like to erase from our own individual histories. Um, I do think that is probably ill-advised, right? And I think that it's kind of similar, like with like what you're implying with like the fetus communion thing, for example. Um, you know, that's something that people would very much like to forget that humanity came from, or a part of where humanity come from came from. It's something that people would like to forget. And yeah, for the reasons that I already described, it's probably not the best, right? I gave you a couple reasons there why I think that that's not a good idea, right? One, you're disconnecting yourself. It cheapens reality because you forget where you were, where you came from. When you forget where you came from, you have no frame of reference for how far you've gotten or in what direction you're even going. You know, even if you think about it in terms of, you know, again, and this isn't the same thing, but it's taking the same concept and applying it to um a different medium. You know, even if you think of a map, if you forget where you started, then you're not going to know, you have no idea what direction you're going in if you took a look on a map, right? If you forgot you started here, or you've avoided acknowledging that fact, then in what direction you're going, you're not going to know. It's much more difficult to know. I guess you can place yourself where you are presently, but over, you know, knowing how far you've traveled and what direction you've been going at the very least is much more difficult for you to surmise, I guess, you know. So I don't know if that has anything to do with what you're saying, but I appreciated that comment though. Yeah, I think it's a good comment, and I think you are correct. So as much as I can understand what you're talking about, right? Because you do definitely seem to have a little bit more knowledge on this particular topic than I do, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and admit that, right? Like, thank you for adding that though, that because that did clarify what you were saying. Like I said, just, you know, think, how would I explain my position to a retarded 5-year-old, and then type your message out, and I'll be able to hang with you. So I appreciate it when you do that. But yeah, it is an interesting point you make too. I do appreciate that. Um, Now, so like when it comes to the auteur theory here, I got off on a little tangent there, but it was a good tangent though. I always like going off on these little tangents. These videos are much funner for me to make when I get to sit and talk with somebody, right? You know, when we're talking about talking about the topic at hand, it makes it much more enjoyable, right? And usually I have my cutie pie here to do that with me. I believe she's busy tonight though, so she's not here with us to be able to sit and chat. But so it's always, so I'm glad you showed up, Embrace Primalism. Thank you for popping in and chatting with me, because it's always a lot funner to sit and chat with somebody when you're streaming than just read everything off of a screen, right? You know, although I do like to read what's on the screen in hopes that the YouTube viewers will get some sort of knowledge based off of this, but it's always funner to have somebody to chat with, you know? So anyways, yeah, back to off of my tangent and back onto Auteur theory. You know, I definitely think that there is merit to using auteur theory to analyze films, even modern day directors, even if you disagree that you can use auteur theory to analyze modern day directors or modern day films. I still think that it is absolutely a decent avenue, or a worthwhile avenue, a viable avenue to go through as far as film criticism goes. I don't see like any harm in doing that. And when it comes to this, I did definitely wanted to point out, one, I think it's also worth analyzing the art, the text alone. I think that's also worth doing. I think it's worth making both, taking both into consideration at two separate points, analyzing a film through the context of auteur theory, assuming that you're looking at a director that may actually hit those three rules of auteur theory. If not, then you could probably reject that idea outright and not waste your time, but at least look at the art on its own as well. Absolutely. I think they're both valid and both even necessary to get a more complete picture of the piece of art that is created. And also, looking at the screenplay writer as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. When it comes to, what Miss Pauline and Mr. David Kippen over here are all saying, you should look at the screenwriter as a movie's principal author. He says here, I'm going to read that quote again. A filmgoer seeking out pictures written by Eric Roth or Charlie Kaufman won't always see a masterpiece, but he'll see fewer clunkers than he would following even a brilliant director like John Borman or an intelligent actor like Jeff Goldblum. The screenwriter is the utmost influence on a film. I think it's just, that's, to me, reads as an absolute statement that just simply isn't one for one. I think it depends. It depends on the director, it depends on the screenplay writer, it depends on the actors, and it depends on the movie. It depends on the situation. In some movies, the writer is definitely going to have more of a more influence over the final product than a director is. In some cases, even actors have a lot more influence over the final product. I think everybody is familiar with Edward Norton and some of the rumors that have gone around Hollywood about him, how much effort or how much control he exercises over the particular movies that he is in some cases, to the point that directors refuse to work with him or even stop working with him. I don't know how true it is, but I am aware that there is a theory in and around that the ending of American History X was Edward Norton's doing. He actually changed the ending in the editing room, regardless of the fact that the director did not want the ending changed. The director of the film had a completely different vision for the ending of that film, and Edward Norton had his vision essentially won out. Okay, so when you talk about just who influenced the film American History X, who influenced that film more, the director or the actor Edward Norton, I think you have a very arguable case that it was Edward Norton, not the director, actually, as a matter of fact. In fact, the director, I believe he actually, for years, was out there writing about it, writing opinion pieces in various journals about Edward Norton and how he ruins the movie American History X because of his editing, the editing that he did on the movie. And he's contested that his idea did not get to make it to the final product. And he has, in his own words, I think he would say that, yeah, the American History X that we all know, and a lot of us love, I think that's a really good movie. It was mostly influenced, not mostly, but Edward Norton had a much greater influence on the film than the director did, right? So I think even the director would say that. So that's a case for the actor had more influence over the film than the director or the writer. I think if we get into writers now that had more influence over a film, I'm a little more hard-pressed to think of a writer that specifically had more control over the film, or at least a greater influence on the final product. I would like to say, I would probably say, if I could think of add just on the spot, think of one, it would probably be Cormac McCarthy. Cormac McCarthy, the writer, the novelist, seems to have a lot of influence. Okay, here's a great example. Cormac McCarthy, the writer for the movie The Counselor. The Counselor, not the best film. Okay, there's a lot of issues, particularly with pacing when it comes to that film. But Cormac McCarthy, as a writer, had more influence over that film than anybody else working on the film. He wrote that. That was the first film he specifically wrote as a screenplay for the film. And, if you do a little bit of reading into it, there is a lot of people who express the idea that Cormac McCarthy, including, I believe, actors in the film, express the idea that Cormac McCarthy had the bulk of the decision. Oh, wait, you know what? Fuck. Cormac McCarthy might have actually directed it. Now that I'm thinking about it, hold on, he might have actually directed Cormac. Sorry, I said Cormac. Cormac McCarthy might have even went on to direct The Counselor. Oh, he doesn't have a single direction credit. Never mind. Okay. The Counselor, written by. So who was the director there? Director Ridley Scott. Okay, so yeah, I was going to say that blows my mind that Ridley Scott directed that. Wow, you would not expect that from watching the movie. But yeah, from what I remember saying, Cormac McCarthy was very heavily invested in the making of this film, and people have indicated that that's what led to this film not being nearly as good as it could have been. This movie is quite a departure from Ridley Scott's filmography. As a director, there is nothing stylistic about this movie that speaks to Ridley Scott. Again, I've watched this movie multiple times, and never once did it click that this is a Ridley Scott film. That blows my mind that Ridley Scott made this. Good actors, really good actors in here. We got, I'm blanking on some of their names: Michael Fassbender, Penelope Cruz, Carmen Diaz, Brad Pitt, and oh come on, what's his name? Javier Bardem. Really good actors in this movie, but it was just a pooper of a film for the most part. I mean, there's aspects of it that are good, and the themes of the movie are very unique. And I mean, they're Cormac McCarthy themes, and I do love Cormac McCarthy as a writer. His book Blood Meridian is definitely one of my favorite novels. Really interesting novel. But there is an example of a screenplay writer or a writer who had more control over a film than the director and the actors did. And again, I think even Ridley Scott came out and said as much, right? So, and then of course you have directors. We can think of a lot of different movies where the director had, anything Alfred Hitchcock did, right? We're in Auteur Theory, so we've already went over a list of auteur directors that had much more control over their films, right? So I think it just depends on the film, in my opinion. Now, a modern approach or Auteur Theory 2.0. So how do we take, this is essentially that we're going to go over how you apply Auteur Theory, or how nofilmschool.com believes you could apply Auteur Theory to modern day films, right? So now that we know full and well what the theory is about, who is considered an OG auteur and who isn't and why, let's talk about updating it, because cinema has changed a lot since Truffaut and Saris were writing about this idea. If we use Howard Hawks as the template, we can take a look at filmmakers and storytellers who aren't just directors to see if they fit into the box as well. After all, maybe there are some cinematographers who have this type of impact, maybe some producers. I think that's an interesting question to pose too. We're all about inclusiveness and highlighting the work of the collective on a project. Let's make a new list of what might qualify someone for being an auteur, and then after we do this, we'll talk about why it might actually be helpful. Let's propose that to be an auteur, you should have 1, at least 5 projects within different genres that also 2, employ varying key collaborations, and yet, and here comes the tricky part, 3, feature a consistent worldview and style. Let us know in the comments if you can think of any good examples, non-directors. One possible example would be the screenwriter Paddy Chayefsky. Chayefsky is perhaps best known for the prophetic newsroom media epic Network. But looking at the rest of his career, it does seem like as a screenwriter, he had enough impact that you could make a case that he is an auteur. Network, Altered States, Marty, the Americanization of Emily, and The Goddess all had different directors and stars within different genres. How about producers? Does Jerry Bruckheimer qualify? How about cinematographer? Roger Deakins, Robert Richardson? How about editors? Walter Murch, Arthur Schmidt? The list could go on. The idea being that at various high levels in the process, a creative person can have, I believe they mean to say any creative person can have a personal impact on the project that becomes their fingerprint. And then Auteur Theory and you, that definitely applies to more of the filmmakers in the audience there. Embrace primalism. That one might be for you there. But so yeah. That is, in general, that's kind of their idea of how we can apply Auteur Theory to the modern day filmscape, the modern day cinema landscape that we are currently in, is that, there might very well be auteurs of all different kinds. It's not necessarily that auteurs don't exist, but the theory might even be applicable to screenplay writers, producers, etc., right? And, it's definitely an argument, right? It's definitely something worth conversing about. And looking for different examples, like what specific producers out there have a distinct style in the films that they produce, actors, and writers, we did kind of go over Cormac McCarthy. A lot of his writing really, really does have a very distinct style, a very distinct set of themes that he always seems to tackle whenever he's writing a book or a book that gets made into a film or screenplay writing for a film himself. Okay. Getting back to film and myth making, there is the general utility of knowing things, science and history, to become contextualized, of antiquity and the modern day, which gets hairy. Then there is that channeling and spreading of the holy logos that works reality into existence. Oh, yeah, sure. Interesting. I like film myth making, by the way. Getting back into film and myth making. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. There is the general utility of knowing things, science and history, to become contextualized. Sure, okay. I mean, I get you. Yes, if you do have to know, like we kind of discussed about earlier, you do want to know where you come from in order to be contextualized, right? That is kind of important. History is a big part of it. Like I said earlier, too, science is a big part of it too. I do think science definitely kind of decontextualize a lot of the religious and magical aspects of where we come from. But science is still equally important. You can't dog it and say that it's worthless, right? Um, Regardless, knowing things of antiquity and the modern day, which gets hairy. Sure. Okay. I mean, well, yeah, it definitely gets hairy. Like, I think there's a lot of conflicting um what's the word I'm looking for? There is a lot of conflict there because sometimes those two just don't gel, right? Um then there is the channeling and spreading of the holy logos that works reality into his existence. That sentence, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that. Holy logos. Then there is that channeling and spreading of the holy logos that works reality into existence. Um, yeah, that one I would like clarification on. That one you're gonna have to talk to me like I'm a retarded 5-year-old to fully understand what you mean by that. I got a basic idea, but would appreciate more of a deep understanding of it, what it is you're saying when you say that particular sentence. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I understand. So what you're essentially saying is, yeah, you have to include all of that into filmmaking or myth making. By the way, I do like that statement. If you're going into making films or telling stories, essentially spreading stories, making stories, whether that's modern day through film or what have you, um, it is important. There's the utility of knowing things, particularly of iniquity, and modern day, and then channeling the holy logos that works reality into existence. Again, until I have a full understanding of what you mean by that, I don't know how much, I guess I don't know if I, agree with that or not, but, I mean, I think that you really are putting, um, what's the word? It is a much more, well, I guess I know the word, a much more contextualized idea of what's supposed to go of filmmaking, right? Like filmmaking, and now I understand exactly what you mean by modern day filmmakers are not contextualized. I don't think I can, even when I look at my favorite filmmakers, I don't think I can think of a single one that is doing everything that you just described, embrace primalism. I don't think that I can think of, I think I can think of maybe one or two that have gotten close. Um, you know, Maybe this is a silly one, but Martin Scorsese does seem to at least be attempting. He does seem to have some level, certainly not an antiquated view of science and history, I suppose. Like he does make religious films. Religion very clearly is an important thing to him, but it's his very specific understanding of religion, not religion as a whole. I don't know if you're ever going to find Martin Scorsese making a movie about Islam or the history of, say, like Egyptian mythology or paganism or anything of that. He certainly I don't think is going to ever make a religious film that strays distinctly from what is said, specifically from what is said in the Bible. But he does have his version of what his historical context, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, that he stays within and does attempt to bring to the screen. And he does that too with a lot of his New York based movies, right? Like he definitely is a fan of making movies centered around the city of New York and stories that come from New York. And those particular movies, again, he does put some historical context into there for sure, but does it with, varying levels of artistic license. And in some cases, it's a very heavy amount of artistic license that he puts on the historical context that he's dedicating to film. In other cases, in other cases, it's only a little bit of his artistic license, which was what, well within his rights to do as a filmmaker, I suppose. But just making the statement that he certainly does do that to some extent. And I think there's probably other filmmakers that do as well. I might just not know who they are or I'm blanking on it. But that's about the only one that I can pick off the top of my head that is at least not doing what you're saying by a long shot, at least not in full, but is doing a small modicum of what it is that you're explaining, right? So that's the only one I could think of. Otherwise, I agree fully that with the previous point that you made, after you've elucidated some of the things that you have specifically said, you've helped clarify some of those. Yeah, modern day filmmakers, where was it? Oh shoot, where was it? Yeah, there's a lot of great technicians. Modern day film. There was something about modern day filmmakers, and their filmmakers these days are usually not fully contextualized. Therefore, their work won't stand in time. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. Now that I kind of understand what you mean by that, yes, I definitely agree with you. Modern day filmmakers, could be, they have a level of auteurism, auteur theory can be applied to some extent to them, but even in the more extreme cases of auteur filmmakers, or what people would consider the more extreme cases of auteurs, they're not working at the level that you are talking about. They're just not. Or at least there's none that I can think of. There maybe be some more esoteric ones that I'm not aware of that you would be aware of. If so, though, I would definitely appreciate it if you threw their names out in the chat. That would be awesome to be able to write their names down and take a look at those particular filmmakers. That would be a lot of fun, and could very also potentially be good substance for a later stream that I could do, right? Like, because I do plan on doing specific streams about specific filmmakers, like 2 hours on Quentin Tarantino films or what have you. It would be interesting if you could throw other names in down there of filmmakers you think might come close to being contextualized enough that they do stand the test of time. If you could think of a couple filmmakers that, in your opinion, do meet that criteria and throw them in the chat, I would love to look at them, and then that would be some really interesting material for a later stream. So that would be really cool. I'd appreciate it if you could do that. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, we're going to go ahead and take everything that we've talked to today and put it, contextualize it. We're going to put it, we'll put it into practice. We're not going to contextualize it, but we're going to put it into practice using David Fincher, or at least Media Insider is, and we are going to watch him. Let me flip you over to the big screen, and let's take a listen to what Film Insider has to say about David Fincher's films. I think it was David Fincher. I might be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's who this particular part of his video was about.
Link to at the end of this video. So let's put this idea of consistent visual style to the test. A director that I admire, who almost certainly would be defined by anyone as an auteur, is David Fincher. So what then does a Fincher movie look like? The first thing I recognize is his color palette. Often very muted, you might even say dreary, creating a slight melancholy, heavy feeling. It's especially obvious in man-made industrial or commercial settings such as this. But more importantly than the mise-en-scene is the mise-en-shot, the way he shoots a scene. His style is incredibly deliberate, unlike some filmmakers who prefer the...
Not to go completely off topic, but I'm currently in the midst of rereading through Fight Club right now. I read it a long time ago. Now I'm rereading the book again. I'm a huge Chuck Palahniuk fan. Just rereading the book, and it always gets me the differences between the books and the movie. Still really good. The book is awesome, movie is good, but that is one of the few books where I honestly love the movie so much that I don't know if I could put the book above the movie. That's a very rare instance of that. But anyways, yeah, continuing.
Fluidity of shooting film from the shoulder like Alfonso Cuarón, Fincher favors precise static shots and subtle movements that are almost invisible. In other words, he's very prescriptive with what he wants the audience to look at in a shot, and uses his actors to steer our attention like this.
Where'd you get it?
It's a Christmas gift from my mother 2 years ago.
That's very sweet. So tell me something, Arthur. You don't remember anyone you might have had a conversation with regarding the Zodiac?
So it seems Fincher certainly passes the first test put forward by Truffaut. What about the second test? Truffaut said that auteurs should also have a consistent theme to their work, something that reflects their life, their personality in the films that they choose to make. Let's look at Christopher Nolan for this one.
When things look out of control, isn't it time for you to take
Always
control?
trying to sell you something.
To maybe
Tony
create
Robbins
something
here.
that's all your own that no one can
Here we
take.
go.
Across all of his films, there is a consistent play with ideas of family and time. You could almost say his various films, whether they're war films, sci-fi, or action, are all part of the same body of work that reflects these themes. So underneath the science and narrative about human extinction, Interstellar is really about family and love transcending space and time. In Dunkirk, it's the father-son narrative arc on the boat that provides the biggest emotional punch in terms of the various sacrifices made by the soldiers and sailors of the conflict. Underneath it all, it's about family and love. Likewise, Nolan's fascination with time has been the backbone of Memento, which plays out in reverse narrative, and perhaps most explicitly in the yo-yo narrative of Tenet, which goes backwards and forwards in time. We see this too in Inception and Interstellar again. Nolan is clearly interested in the whole concept of time.
I think all the films I've made, I like to think that they're connected in certain ways, but that they're also different from each other. That's as best as I can put it. And so I'd like to continue working along those lines.
Okay, so it seems pretty straightforward so far. To be an auteur, you need to have a consistent aesthetic and explore a specific theme across your body of work. So where does the debate come in? Well, as I mentioned earlier, and as you'll be fully aware if you've ever stayed at the end of a film to watch all of the credits, films are actually a truly collaborative process that involve hundreds of people. Consider who is
So yeah, he's going to go into a bit of the criticisms now that we've kind of already gone over. He does a little bit of a better job at highlighting them. We might come back to that. I will definitely link his video in the description for you guys. Because it's a good video, and it definitely helps, it helps to give it a good watch 2 or 3 times. But I really wanted to just go over, because I enjoy his interpretation of David Finch's work, and really appreciate, because I forget how many movies that guy actually made, right? I forget about the Zodiac, and I forget about, obviously Fight Club, but there's a few in there, Dunkirk, there's a few in there that I completely forget that he made. But yeah, this is a good practice. What I wanted to illustrate here with this particular part of the video was to illustrate what that looks like, to identify the signature aspects of films, of a director's filmography, that would lead you to the conclusion that he is a potential candidate as an auteur, right? And so we're just going to go over, we'll probably do that for another day, but we're just going to briefly hit on Mr. Rory Glynn. Very small channel, so show him a little love if you enjoy this. Only 6,000 subscribers. Mr. Rory Glynn is going to do a little bit of auteur theorizing on Wes Anderson. So let's just take a listen to what he has to say. Let's give us just a little more practice of looking at directors through the auteur theory lens.
Auteur theory refers to the notion that a film is primarily a product of its director's vision, that certain directors bring such a distinctive flavor to their work that they can be considered the movie's primary author, even more so than the writer of the screenplay. While the concept really emerged with the rise of the French New Wave in the 1940s and 50s, and was explored by writers in the French film magazine Cahiers du Cinéma, the popularization of the term itself is attributed to American film critic Andrew Sarris, who further explored the idea in his celebrated 1962 essay Notes on the Auteur Theory. At one point of the essay, Sarris argues that one of the theory's key principles is the distinguishable personality of the director as a criterion of value. He writes, "Over a group of films, a director must exhibit certain recurrent characteristics of style, which serves as his signature. The way a film looks and moves should have some relationship to the way a director thinks and feels." The auteur theory is most commonly applied to well-known directors such as Orson Welles, Alfred Hitchcock, Stanley Kubrick, Martin Scorsese, Tim Burton, Quentin Tarantino, and Christopher Nolan, all of whom bring certain stylistic...
Oh, Tim Burton. Yeah, that's a good one too. That's a good candidate for auteur theory. I completely forget about him. Okay, anyway.
...quirks and characteristics to their movies, whether they wrote the screenplay or not, that makes these works easily identifiable as uniquely their own. For example, we have Hitchcock's recurring staircase sequences, or the pop culture references that are peppered throughout Tarantino's dialogue, or Nolan's time-bending narratives. Here I aim to discuss the auteur theory in relation to the work of Wes Anderson, who is arguably one of the most distinctive voices working in cinema today. With a feature film career that spans 25 years and 9 movies, with a 10th, The French Dispatch, due to release at some point this year, Anderson has developed a unique style that makes each of his films unmistakably Andersonian, to the point where some film fans jokingly claim that he's become his own genre. His style has been parodied by a sketch on Saturday Night Live, an episode of Family Guy, and YouTuber Patrick H. Willems in his mock trailer, What If Wes Anderson Directed X-Men? The most distinctive aspect of Wes Anderson's work is his visual style. Many of his shots, particularly those found in his later films, resemble paintings. Bright color palettes and heavy use of perfectly symmetrical profile shots are among his trademarks, creating an intentionally artificial-seeming aesthetic. Perhaps the best example of this is his critically acclaimed Oscar-winning film The Grand Budapest Hotel, which features hyper-stylized set design and pastel colors that pop right out of the screen. Pink, red, and...
Just to chime in here a little bit, I have never noticed that, but when he says that his shots look a lot like paintings, that fucking absolutely clicked in my head. I've never thought of that, but it is so true. Wes Anderson has a whole series of shots in every single movie that might as well just be paintings. You know, they're the way that they're painted, the color palettes that he uses. I mean, he's really does have an eye for colors when it comes to color theory. He seems to fucking nail that shit.
Purple are featured very heavily throughout this film, which gives it a distinctly candy-coated look that fits the whimsical, heightened reality it takes place in. The storytelling in Anderson's films relies heavily on visuals, as he's proven himself to be a strong example of a filmmaker who makes good use of mise en scène, a master of filling the screen with information without letting it become overwhelming or confusing. The Grand Budapest Hotel is his most meticulously crafted film to date, with nearly every frame rich with background detail and every character movement choreographed and performed with clockwork precision. Not unlike Orson Welles, Wes Anderson also frequently collaborates with the same people in his movies. Bill Murray, for example, has become something of a muse for the director, appearing in nearly all of his films with the only exception being his debut feature, Bottle Rocket. Other actors the director regularly works with are Tilda Swinton, Willem Dafoe, Jason Schwartzman, Angelica Houston, Adrian Brody, and the Wilson brothers. Frequent behind-the-scenes collaborators include composer Alexander Desplat, cinematographer Robert D. Yeoman, production designer Adam Stockhausen, and costume designer Melina Canonero. Although Anderson collaborates with all these very different and hugely talented people, he's almost like the director of an orchestra in that he draws together their separate skills in service of his own unique vision. His work generally has a consistent tone. They are primarily comedies, but often with a melancholy or bittersweet undercurrent. His sense of humor is distinctly deadpan, with sometimes absurd dialogue delivered in a blunt and matter-of-fact way.
Does it concern you that your daughter has just run away from home?
That's a loaded question.
The general mood in his movies tends to be quite understated, but occasionally this mood will be broken in a comically jarring way. Take this scene from the Grand Budapest Hotel.
She's been murdered, and you think I did it.
Another characteristic associated with most of his films is the use of classic rock on his soundtracks, particularly over montages or scenes that unfold in slow motion. This is a trademark that goes all the way back to Bottle Rocket, which features a chase.
I love that scene from the Darjeeling Limited, where they're running on the train and dropping all of their baggage. You know, obviously they drop their metaphorical baggage throughout the film. Really awesome. Again, that's my favorite Wes Anderson movie, but he's got a lot of good ones. Hopefully this has given you guys a real good idea of what it means, you know, what people are looking for with an auteur. Notice how they mentioned all of the people that he works with, specifically in the background, was something that we talked about earlier when it comes to being an auteur. Very intriguing. I don't know. We're going to go back to, what was this channel again? Roy Glenn. Give this guy a fucking like. I think he's doing a stellar fucking job, so I'm going to follow his ass. He deserves it. Okay. Let's let Roy continue on being his badass self.
Scene during the final act set to the Rolling Stones' 2000 Man. Many of Anderson's protagonists are portrayed as difficult or self-absorbed in some way, be it Rushmore's bright but arrogant overachiever Max Fisher, the egotistical title characters of both The Royal Tenenbaums and The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, or the insecure Mr. Fox from Fantastic Mr. Fox, who admits that he doesn't feel good about himself if he senses that others aren't knocked out, dazzled, and slightly intimidated by him, and unwittingly puts his friends and family in danger in his quest to satisfy his own ego. Anderson seems particularly fascinated by dysfunctional familial dynamics. The Royal Tenenbaums and the Darjeeling Limited are all about this theme, with the former focusing on a patriarch trying to repair his broken relationship with his estranged wife and adult children, and the latter following three brothers who have not spoken to each other in a year as they reconnect on a train journey across India to find their mother. Even in films where family isn't necessarily...
Have to throw in my personal thing here, obviously. I mean, it is my stream, so I'm going to take the liberty to do that. The Darjeeling Limited appeals to me so much because I have two little brothers. And me and my two little brothers watched that movie for the first time together. And the themes that he hits on, the moments in that movie when you see these brothers together, whether it's them fighting, whether it's them coming to terms with each other, whether it's them betraying each other, or it's even them, forgiving each other for that betrayal, it all hits so hard because they're things that are going to happen in most relationships you have in life. You're going to have these kinds of things happen, but he nails it so much. That movie, it killed us. Me and my two little brothers watched that movie together, and the three of us were like, fuck, guys, like, that movie was awesome. All three of us were like, that was my favorite movie ever, and we all understood why. So that is, to me, the Darjeeling Limited is a shining example of the kind of power a filmmaker can have, and at the very least, poking you in the emotional bits, at bare minimum. So, I really appreciated that. Just wanted to say that.
Necessarily the central theme, Anderson still often explores fractured or distant parent-child relationships. In The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, the title character bonds with a young man who may or may not be his son. In Fantastic Mr. Fox, young Ash Fox is resentful of the fact that his father seems to offer more encouragement and praise to his cousin Christopherson than he does to him. Anderson's films also frequently feature characters who are outsiders or lonely souls forming connections with one another. The best example of this may be Moonrise Kingdom, in which two love-struck adolescents, one an orphaned foster boy and the other a rebellious young girl who feels misunderstood by her parents, conspire to escape their unhappy lives by running away together. Fantastic Mr. Fox is, to date, the only Wes Anderson film to be adapted from pre-existing source material, in this case a beloved children's book by Roald Dahl. However, while the film follows the same basic story as the original book and includes a number of the same lines of dialogue, it remains a distinctly Wes Anderson picture, from its deadpan tone to its quirky characters to its precise shot composition. Anderson has written or at least co-written all of his movies to date, but if anybody else were to direct these scripts, they would simply not be the same. It's Anderson's singular, idiosyncratic vision that makes his movies what they are. In this way, Wes Anderson can indeed be described as a modern-day cinematic auteur.
You see, there are still faint glimmers of civilization left in this barbaric slaughterhouse that was once known as humanity. Indeed, that's what we provide in our own modest, humble, insignificant... fuck it.
That was a good movie, too. Okay. So there you have it. There was, let's go back to that channel. What was that again?
The Auteur Theory reversed.
Thought he did a great job right there. So give it up for Rory. Golf clap for you, Rory. And so this kind of gives you an idea, I hope, of how to visualize a director's work through this lens of auteur theory. I hope that's kind of informative to watch Mr. Rory Glenn here do that, and then Media Insider do that with David Fincher earlier. Gives you a good example. Something that maybe you can replicate at home one day if you got some time. Make a list of your director's favorite movies, watch through those movies, and try to glean some specific traits that he adds stylistically to every movie that he makes. Hey there, Embrace Primalism. I didn't actually see that you commented. Hold on, okay. That logos is mistranslated to the word, as in the word of God that created the world. The reality of the word logos is more like reckoning, but the definition is a few pages long. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. It's like the thing that invented the universe and existential realities, syntactical logic. You can get into gnosis, defined as sacred divine knowing. Thank you for that. I didn't know what that was. Through the pharmacon, which leads into the metaphysics. Then there is being a fly on the wall, absorbing raw unfolding of the universe happening before you or your camera. Okay. So let me apply that to what you had said earlier. Then there is that channeling and spreading of the holy logos, as you defined, the thing that has invented the universe and existential realities, syntactical logic, that works reality into existence. So yeah, I would still be intrigued. Um, I am about to end the stream here in a second just because I really got to pee so bad. Here, let me flop the camera over this way. Here we go. I need to pee way fucking bad. And I need to give my cutie pie a call and then eat some dinner too. But still though, I would be interested in hearing, like, if you think there's any modern day directors, even if they're esoteric ones that a lot of people aren't aware of, that are accomplishing that, that would definitely be my next question. I definitely understand what you're saying now. I appreciate you clarifying that. Definitely makes it a lot clearer. But yeah, I would be interested in hearing, in your opinion, if you think that there's any filmmaker, at least nowadays, that is doing that or is even capable of doing it. There we go. Thank you. I appreciate it. There is something that happened to fine art. The world wars appeared to change many things with their reasons running deep into certain controversial territories. Well, yeah, sure. Definitely get that one. The birth of the art of film is set within a broader fine art context of the time. Okay, sure. Fair enough. Yeah, it's just one very small aspect of it, yes. The spine of this discipline is music. Sure. Okay. We look at Bach as a grandfather all the way to Strauss as the end of an art and era. The reason they are all German is tied to other areas of depth. Oh, yeah, sure, which is not easily researched. Again, for very obvious reasons that I understand. Need to revive the muse. Sure, absolutely, I get that. Okay, yeah. I mean, no, something definitely absolutely happened to fine art. I mean, I think, for devil's advocate, some would say that is, what's the word, inevitable, that it's going to change. But there's a difference, I suppose. I guess maybe even your argument would be like, yeah, of course it's going to change, but we're talking, we're talking about superfluous change, superficial change, not the kind of change that you're talking about. What you're talking about is a complete transformation of something that goes from being deep and meaningful and contextualized, particularly in a sense of historical context, to what is now modern day, well, which is decontextualized, heavily decontextualized, and thus loses the soul, well, the quote soul, or AKA meaning, that would be required, I guess, to make that kind of deeper art that you are talking about, right? The art that, as you put it, the art that absorbs the raw and unfolding universe, through the camera, before the camera, or as you also put it, channeling and spreading of the holy logos and that works reality into existence, right? Like art, specifically talking about film now, but even I guess maybe, I think you would agree probably all forms of art are so decontextualized that they are no longer capable of doing. At least modern day artists are not, so. And yeah, obviously, like you said, there's reasons why that happens. The majority of them are very controversial, but interesting, fun to talk about, though. They are interesting to talk about, and that itself would make for a good stream on a Friday, a Film Buff Friday, right? Analyzing the initial start of art as a film, the birth of art as a film, as you say it, into what it has turned into, and how it lost that contextualization, and what the controversial topics, that you would have to cover in order to make that statement, in order to make that analysis, because you are going to dive into some controversial territory. It doesn't seem like you're a stranger to that, though, to diving into the more controversial aspects as to why that sort of thing happens, but I appreciate it. No, that is very good insight. I do like the insight. And I definitely agree with it. Yeah, for certain. Absolutely. And I definitely like what you had to say about music there. I definitely agree. Yeah, the spine of all of that is music, very much. Music stretches, I mean, obviously stretches much farther back than film does. So I was able to contextualize a lot more of history through music than you can film, sure. But um yeah, I appreciate that. I do appreciate that input. Again, I would still like to hear if there is anybody at all, or just a no, a flat ass no. There's nobody that is capable of doing of contextualizing. There is nobody who is capable of capturing the logos the way that you are describing. If there isn't, then it is what it is. But if there is anybody you think that even comes close, I would be intrigued to go check out their filmography and see what that looks like. You know what I mean? See what you believe that honestly looks like, because that would be an interesting exercise and a very fun stream to do at some point. You know what I mean? But still, I appreciate that input. Yeah. Now, so for anybody out there, including you, I embrace primalism. It sounds like you've done a lot of reading on this anyhow, but for anybody out there who does want to do more reading onto Auteur Theory, this is, let's see, what was this? Oh yeah, okay. So this is a couple lists of books that I found that cover Auteur Theory a little bit more in depth. The Elusive Auteur, Film and Authorship by Virginia Wright, The Global Auteur, Auteurist An Auteurist History of Film by Charles Silver. That one I seen was highly rated, had a lot of good reviews on it. Auteurs and Authorship by Barry Keith Grant. And the list just keeps going. Not for that much longer. I got another one here. This is just a Google's books list. Pretty easy to put together. Auteur Theory, Orson Welles. Right, this is the reason I specifically went with this is the movie, what was it? Closely Watched Films. That one was a big one. An Introduction to the Art of Narrative Film Techniques was one that was very heavily lauded as a very important book for understanding auteur theory. And let's see, what was the other one? There was a second one on here, if I remember correctly. Where was it? Maybe it was on that other list. Oh, I think I already said it, actually. Where was it? Auteurs and Authorship was another one that, at least on Reddit, so take it with a dose of, a grain of salt, all right? On Reddit, everybody that I saw was heavily recommending this particular book. So I will link both of these web pages in the description on my YouTube video. As I will this YouTube video. We're not going to have time to get into this YouTube video, which is fine. I didn't think we actually would anyways, to be honest with you. I kind of had this on the back end in case I ran through everything super quick. Thankfully, I had somebody to chat with this time around, so that was fun. And so I didn't have to press myself to make time. Sometimes I got to do that because I don't have enough set up to fill the full 2 hours of streaming. So this time we got through it and had more than enough material, which was nice. And I even got to throw in an extra 40 minutes on top of what I usually do. So that's awesome. I appreciate that. But I will link this video because it is an enjoyable video. It is more of an auteur theorist view on Michael Bay. So I do recommend it. I'll make sure I link it in the description below. And then we already linked these two. You already went through those. That's fine. Okay. So that will probably do it for me. I need to pee. I need to eat. I need to call my cutie pie. And all those things are on my list of things to do. Hold on. Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah. A perfect director. I don't know if I can name a perfect director. Definitely. Absolutely. Everyone is on their own varying levels of the way back or the way forward to whatever the good stuff is. Sure. Okay. Fair enough. But generally, nobody has the full picture. Yeah. I mean, certainly. Yeah. From what you described, what I can glean for what your definition of the full picture would be, right? Like I said earlier, I don't know if you were here for it, but I definitely can't think of any directors myself that encompass the full picture at all, so yeah. It is more or less re-engineering the historical and cultural understanding to get back into an innovative orientation to pick up where the ancients left off. Interesting. Okay, yeah, sure. And yeah, nobody, I mean, that's where you got to go from here, I suppose, and nobody is doing that. It took us 2,000 years to pick up on the science, but the more existentially demanding topics are trivialized and mystified. Oh, well, sure, yeah. Again, I think that you could go into so many different reasons why that is, right? Why the existentially demanding topics are trivialized and mystified. I think it goes to, one, a lot of film turned into more for the sake of making money, entertainment. It became an industry that was specifically designed to make money and in some cases just make pure schlop for the sake of making money versus diving into those particular topics and using film as a medium by which you can handle such deep. I almost didn't catch that burp. Handling such deep topics, right? I don't think filmmakers who are attempting to dive into that would dive into that deep of topics are appreciated in modern day Hollywood, in the particular modern day industry. I think a lot of it gets died down for the sake of not offending modern day sensibilities, even, you know. And I think that there's also a question as to how much of it can the audience grasp before it's too much, right? Wow, that is interesting. Is that true? If you die before you die, you won't die when you die. Wow, that is very interesting. Man, I really like that phrase. That is crazy. That's kind of haunting too. That's on St. Paul's Monastery on Mount Athos in Greece. Wow, interesting, huh? That is very intriguing. Yeah. Well, yeah, so no, okay, I agree. I appreciate the answer too. That yeah, there just isn't any modern day directors that are doing that. Um, but I mean it is intriguing like to see if anybody ever does get there, you know? Like you did say everybody's on a on their own specific level of either getting forward to the good stuff or backwards to the good stuff, either recontextualizing history to the point that they're getting to that or moving forward in a point where they can, you know, focus on recontextualizing history, right? Um but yeah, like I said, as in terms of, you know, what you were describing earlier, I don't think there's any director that's reaching there either, you know, not in that particular sense, you know. I agree with you on that. I think in general, no, nobody is accomplishing. So, you know, it is what it is. Um but it would be, I mean, it is fun to think of what that would look like, you know. That is enjoyable. Yeah, know thyself, sure. Oh shit. Okay, sure. That comes from, yeah. Well, I know which right you're talking about too, but um that's interesting, huh? Adult rebirth. Yeah, well, I mean, I understand what you're talking about. You alluded to that earlier. Um in a very clever way too, by the way. Um Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see some filmmakers. I almost said MILF makers. It would be interesting to see some filmmakers cover those kinds of topics. You know, I don't know if we're ever going to, especially on a mainstream level, but it would be interesting to see what that would look like. You know, I'd be very intrigued. I would. But I don't think I'm going to get it in my lifetime. I don't know how old you are. If you're older than me, younger than me, maybe you have a little more life left in you than I do, but I'm not sure if, you know, we're ever going to see filmmakers do it. But, you know, that's not all bad. I think it means that it's up to us to be able to do it for ourselves, right? Which, you know, I think in and of itself is not a bad thing, and two, almost a little bit poetic, or almost to some extent you almost have to be able to do it by yourself, you know, to some extent, right? It would still be intriguing to imagine what that would look like in the Roma film, right? So yeah, that's what I feel. But yeah, anyways though, I do appreciate you sitting and chatting with me, man. It makes these streams a lot more fun when I have somebody to sit and talk to. Especially somebody who has interesting things to say like you did, man. Um you know, it gives me a little bit more to research and gives me a couple good ideas for some future streams. I always appreciate that. So thank you, man, for sitting and chatting with me today while I was on stream. Thank you to anybody else who was watching on the live stream too. Always appreciate your viewership, your follows, any of that stuff always helps out. But mostly it just helps out to come in and sit and bullshit with me. That's really the big help. That's really what makes these streams a lot of fun for me, is to sit and have these kinds of conversations. So that's always enjoyable. And to anybody on YouTube too that sees this, you know, if you enjoyed today's stream, please like and subscribe. You know, I guess I gotta throw that out there. That's kind of, you know, everybody does that nowadays. But also can give a consider to hopping into the chat one day and having a conversation with me on this stuff, because I do appreciate that aspect of this. That's really the whole reason why I did a live stream and instead of just doing YouTube videos. It's fun to sit and talk with people about these kinds of things. Talk about the subject at hand, you know. But as interesting as this topic has been, embrace primalism, as interesting as everything you've had to say has been, is because it was very interesting to sit and chat with you. Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that, dude. I think, yeah, you're a very cool guy, too. I do think your brain is a little bit more advanced than mine is. Well, for one, I think you have legitimately spent more of your time invested in these topics, which are important topics to be invested in. Like we were kind of expressing earlier, it does help you understand yourself a lot better and understand the world around you, right? And I cheers. I really appreciate you sitting and chatting with me about it, though. I always have room for your big brain to come in here and chat with me on these topics whenever I'm streaming, man. So please feel free to always come in, say hi, and throw down some knowledge on me and anybody else who's watching, right? Because I appreciate what you had to bring to the stream today. Made it a lot of fun for me. I think it'll make it fun for the viewers. I mean, you know, I do care that the viewers have fun, but more so, I'm here because I enjoy doing this myself as well, you know. So I appreciated getting to chat with you today. Thank you for taking the time to throw down and give me your 2 cents on everything. I thought it was very interesting as well. And please feel free to do it again in the future if you ever have the time, right? But thanks again for hanging out with me too. And anybody else who sees this, thank you for hanging out as well. I hope you have an awesome rest of your night. If you haven't eaten dinner yet, then you make sure you get a good dinner in you too. Talk to your cutie pie, whoever that is. And yeah, man, thanks again for hanging out. I'm going to go get some food. And hopefully I will see you all next time. Oh, that's right. Yeah, for future reference. I don't know why I would not say it, but I don't stream on the weekends. I do stream 7 p.m. every weekday. I'll be streaming next Monday on 7 p.m. And Mondays, I call them my mental health Mondays, where I go over a psychology or a mental health topic. I could only imagine what kind of knowledge you have to throw down on that particular topic. Embrace primalism. I could only imagine. So it'd be interesting to see what you have to say. Next Monday, what I had set out the most common mental disorders that we currently have in America today. So I picked the top 6 mental disorders that seem to be plaguing the current American population. This is just America. I mean, I live in America, so I kept it just to just this particular country because it has a lot of mental issues to go around. Okay, so that's already a broad enough topic for me to cover. But yeah, I'm going to cover that Monday. The 6 most common mental health disorders in America, what they look like, what some signs of them are, what the repercussions of them are, how to see these signs in yourself and other people, and avenues through which you can get help with these, you know, the best forms of therapy that have been, you know, as scientifically proven as they can be to work, right? So the best ones that we know of today. So I'll be doing that next Monday on Mental Health Mondays. If you prefer just the film stuff, then tune in next Friday for more film theory stuff. I think next Friday we're doing a deep dive into film type. So check that out if you enjoy the film stuff. But yeah, in the meantime, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your night. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. You too, embrace primalism. You have a wonderful rest of your weekend. All right, take it easy, and I will see you all Monday. Peace.